The song today. What is this? This is good. Oh,
Today
it's
we
over.
have no, it's not over. It's I
Mm.
haven't. It's
It's
it
on
goes on
repeat.
forever.
Okay, got it. It's just a constant loop. All right, deal.
It's called Sheesh by Surfaces and Ty Verdes.
Sheesh.
I don't have my large Dunkin' cold brew in front of me right now. That's why I was like, you guys saw me before. I was like looking around trying to figure out if I had got one and forgot to bring it in, but I failed to go get one. So I need to see if I can rally off of water.
Mm.
I feel like I need to pop open Spotify and start listening to some new music, man. There's some good
Yeah.
stuff here.
Yeah.
Some energy. I like it. I still listen to my like high school stuff. Like I still listen to Third Eye Blind, Goo Goo Dolls.
Blink 182 by any chance?
I never was that into Blink 182. They're fine.
Third Eye Blind.
They're
Man.
fine.
Third Eye Blind was great.
I recently found out that Jared Leto, who's like one of my favorite actors, I'm actually he's a huge investor, and so I met him, and he's amazing. He's one of my favorite actors, so I was a little starstruck. But I didn't know that he was like the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars, which was
didn't?
like
Okay.
this punk band that I
Okay,
went to a
dude.
few of their concerts when I was a kid. I didn't know that he was in a band.
I got a 30 seconds to Mars, 30-second Jared Leto story for you.
Go,
So-
and then we'll start.
Years ago, before Jared Leto was popular at all, or 30 Seconds to Mars was popular at all, they came and did a concert in Oklahoma City, which I went to with a couple other people, a couple other bands. And before the show, 30 Seconds to Mars was the opening act. And so I missed it. And I'm walking in to go to the main show, and Jared Leto is standing at a white fold-up table trying to sell 30 Seconds to Mars stuff. And me and my friends were all like way too cool to go talk to Jared Leto.
Should have talked to him, man.
Yeah. Jared's done all right since then. And I thought, yeah, what an
Well,
idiot.
people think he's done all right because his acting career is amazing, but the guy, I think he's the only person who was in the seed round of both Uber and Lyft.
Oh, wow.
Which, like, I think he has one of the more impressive angel investment portfolios in the world.
Mm.
Like, he gets access to all this stuff, obviously, now.
Right,
But
right.
back then, still. So, pretty impressive.
I asked Chad, what would your hype track be if y'all were teaching a course, pump up the energy? What song would you play?
Anything big,
Brian
like,
O'Connor
that's good.
said Motley Crue.
Yeah,
It's a good throwback.
actually, there's some good AC/DC or Guns N' Roses as well.
Hard to go wrong with Guns N' Roses, in my opinion.
All right. You want to
Yep, I'm
wanna
ready.
Get rolling? We've got a lot of stuff to get through today. All right. Welcome back. I think we're probably going to have some people trickling in here. Oh, let me turn on my light. Sorry. Don't have my ring light on for you guys yet. There we go. I think we're going to have people trickling in here over the next few minutes, but let's go ahead and get started. Got a lot to get through today. Second lecture day, so we're going to be heavier on kind of diving in on tactics. That's really the focus of today. We're going to dive in a lot on Twitter growth tactics specifically, a lot around distribution, which we kind of alluded to in the last few days as being really important, and talk about newsletters as well, and kind of how to think about creating that funnel from one to the other so that you can build an owned audience. As a reminder, day one, I think we've covered most of this, so I don't want to spend too much time, but hopefully have started to create some goals, established, some format around your topic. We can dive into more during the workshop tomorrow as needed. And the content engine, which we got to spend some time on yesterday, which is great. And then finally, some of the frameworks around writing. And we'll dive into day two here, just because we do have quite a bit to get through. This day tends to be pretty dense. We will have, as you guys know, the cheat sheet, and we can go through all of this during the workshop tomorrow. So don't stress if you feel like you missed something or if we went through something quickly. We'll have plenty of time, and as always, feel free to reach out to Blake in the community. Shoot me an email. I posted that in the chat. Media@sahilbloom.com. Feel free to shoot me an email if you have any follow-up questions or anything like that. Blake, you want to? We can just dive right into it here.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, we can just skip those, Rob. Okay, what's possible? This is the fun part. Is what can you do with this? Where can you go? So obviously, we got a few examples we can share here of people that have done previous cohorts. So Amanda, she's gained 76,000 followers in the last 6 months. Go ahead and go to the next one, Rob. We'll go through these pretty quick. Nathan, same thing. He's gained about 80,000 in the last 6 months. And then the last two examples are just, me and Sahil. Obviously me, I've talked a lot about my story over the past year, so I don't need to rehash that. And everybody knows the GOAT, Sahil, with over with over half a million followers in a couple of years. So just really wanted to put that out there, not so much as a flex per se, but just to say, hey, this can be done. This is what's possible.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's kind of gross number. There's like large numbers, and then there's the value behind it, right? And so I think there's tons of examples of people who have built really valuable followings of like 10 to 25,000, right? Like your goal doesn't have to be going off and building 75,000 followers like Amanda or like Nathan or like Blake has done. There are tons of examples of people who have built scale followings in the 5, 10, 15, 25,000 range, and I think that that's a very legitimate and achievable goal for everyone here. If you kind of dedicate to these principles and really stick to it consistently. So don't be like I sometimes worry that like having too massive of a goal, it's like really hard to envision how you could ever get to that level or get to like that scale or that size, especially when you're first starting out. So I just wouldn't be overly intimidated by large numbers and just, set achievable goals and then go smash them. So understanding how Twitter really works, this is something we've talked about a lot, but long form content is really the key. My hypothesis around this of like why Twitter threads work in terms of follower conversion, a lot of people think there's like this prioritization of the algorithm, and that's sort of things that are out of your control. What's in your control is basically just the idea of impressions to conversion. So in marketing, people always talk about like it takes 8 impressions to convert a customer. So if you think about it with that framework in mind, when you are tweeting, an individual tweet is 1 impression. If I have to hit someone with 8 separate tweets that are really high quality to convince them to follow me, that's pretty hard to do. Like over the course of a week, I have to tweet something insightful every single day in order to convince someone to follow me. A Twitter thread allows you to do that in a single swoop. So you can post a thread, it has multiple tweets in it, and you're hitting someone with a bunch of impressions of your high quality insight and thought all at once. And so that's, at least in my mind, one of the reasons why Twitter threads convert people at a higher degree, because you go look at it, you read a thread, you're like, wow, this person has a bunch of insight that they just hit me with. It wasn't just one thought, it was a real narrative, there was real structure to it, etc., and drives higher conversions. Nothing really beats consistency. We've talked about it. Trying to be consistent with at least one piece of longer form content a week is what I would view as kind of the baseline. Hey, sorry, whoever that is, can you just go on mute? Nothing beats consistency. So just establish a cadence and try to stick to it. Set something that is doable and achievable, by the way, at the start. Don't one of the things I'm ambitious, and one of the mistakes I make is that I'll say like, oh, I'm going to do 4 threads a week and I'm going to, do this. And then it starts to stress me out. And then you're like creating content for the sake of it rather than things that you're really proud of, that the quality bar is really high on. So establish a low and achievable baseline and set out to meet it. And then if you exceed it, great. It's all upside from there. We talked about retweets. Retweets are really the key metric, like at macro metric to really look at. We'll get into some of the nitty gritty around metrics to track and different data that you can track if you are a little bit of a data nerd like I am. And then the last thing here, which we haven't talked about in prior cohorts, it's a newer insight, is comments from larger accounts have a very similar impact to retweets in terms of the number of new impressions that they create on your piece of content. So if you have a piece of content that has a high engagement rate, which we'll talk about, it's the kind of percentage of people that see it that actually engage with it. Having comments from large accounts in that first kind of hour window is hugely impactful because it massively amplifies the number of people that will see it. And then as a result, because you know that it's high quality content, will engage with it. And that drives a nice flywheel to it. Blake, over to you.
Okay, so why, Sahil just touched on, the importance of retweets. So we're just going to run through, what makes people retweet? Why do they do it? First, there's three kind of core principles around like psychological reasons that people do it. So altruism is the first, just people want to help. They want to help raise awareness for a social cause, help a friend, celebrate something they did good. Just being nice basically is one reason. The second reason is they want to look good. Everybody likes to look good, right? So if you see something funny and you share it, then your audience thinks you're funny. Same thing, if you see something intelligent, you share it. There's an inherent, view of, oh man, this guy's intelligent because he shared this intelligent thing. So we retweet content that reflects, how we want people to see us. Third, just to reciprocate what someone else has done for you. When you share value, other people want to share, how you help them. That applies a lot in regard to the stuff that has worked well for me. Educational, tactical how-tos. When you teach people how to do something new, they get excited about it. So then they share it because they want to show other people, hey, this is pretty cool. I learned something here. You could too. And then just at the bottom, when you engage with other people's stuff, obviously, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing. They want you engage with them, they'll engage with you, or at least they're much more likely to. Kind of the second category is functional reasons for retweeting. This first one was actually, I think Sahil told me this really early on, and I thought, why would anyone do that? But as I've grown, man, people do this all the time. They retweet to save for later, and they quote tweet a lot to save for later. Like I'll get tons of quote tweets that specifically say above my tweet, quote tweeting to save for later, quote tweeting to remind myself to read this later. So, people do this way more. I'm not sure, maybe it works for them. I'm not sure how effective it is. But people do it a lot.
This was actually a demand curve insight. I think from the first time we did the course, they did like a survey and had scanned a lot of their audience because they focus on growth marketers and startups, and they had done a bunch of kind of market work, demand curve that is, and they had determined that this was one of the key reasons that people had been retweeting things. I thought it was really interesting too when I learned it. So Shout out to them.
Number 2, challenge the status quo. People will retweet to align their opinion with the opinion you express, or and especially when you take some sort of contrarian point of view. When you step outside of what everyone else is saying, and then it resonates with a certain group of people, they're more likely to retweet that. Last, kind of in the same vein, choosing a side. If you pose a controversial question where you've chosen a side, people will retweet for one of two reasons: either to align with you, or to tell you what an idiot you are and why they disagree with you. But either way, when you post a stance on something, people will typically jump in and retweet it just to give their opinion in regard to what you've said. So how do you manufacture retweetable content? Like I touched on a minute ago, for me, tactical how-to guides, that's what's worked the best for me. Everybody's trying to get better, everybody's trying to improve. So if you can help them do that, and then they in turn can share that with their following and help their following do it, everybody wins type of deal. So rejecting popular opinion or saying what everyone is thinking, I think saying what everyone is thinking is a little, I don't know if misleading is the right word. How I like to think about that is you're saying what everyone else is thinking that they haven't already said. It's like what they have in their mind that they wish they would say, or they didn't have the guts to say in public, or they weren't sure how to say it in public. When you say that, then people have kind of that oh shit moment, like, man, I've thought the same thing, I wish I would have said that. And that's an instant retweet, that's an instant share when you can do something like that. And then the last couple, inside emotion, be concise, funny, and expected. We talked a little bit yesterday in the Q&A just about being concise. If you can elicit emotion from people in a short amount of words, that generally translate to shareable content. Really the emotion part of it. This kind of falls a little bit in the category of, all publicity is good publicity. I'm not sure that's always true, but man, it doesn't really always matter what emotion you bring out of people. You can make them mad, you can make them happy, you can make them curious, you can make them sad. It's just that they feel some kind of emotion when they read, and that will typically lead to them sharing your content.
Teddy asked, and I think this is a good time to talk about it. How do you think about inciting emotion without coming off as pandering?
Fine line.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think, like, if someone wants to be a cynic about any piece of shareable content, they could call it pandering. They could call it, like, just any piece, like, of journalism, frankly, any, media organization that puts out an article that gets shared a lot, someone can make the accusation that it's clickbait or that the headline was misleading. Like, there's always something that someone can criticize. I always just go to my own standard of, like, was I operating in good faith on this? Did I feel like there was a high standard, high quality bar to what I was putting out? And that's kind of how I ground myself, and that's how I feel good whether or not there's people that criticize things that I put out. So I would encourage you to just kind of establish your own quality bar to, where you feel like things, like, you're proud of the content that you're putting out, where you don't feel like you're just, trying to get clicks for the sake of getting clicks. There are people that do that candidly quite effectively. Like, we mentioned Nick Huber. Nick is, a friend. Like, I know Nick.
Yeah.
He often puts things out knowing that it's going to just generate a ton of people, dunking on him and, disagreeing with what he says. And he does that because it's part of his personal meta game. And I wouldn't do that because I don't like having, negativity, like inviting negativity into my life personally, but it works for him. So I think you have to establish your own standards and bar to how you operate in that way.
If you feel like you're too close to it, use our community, use your peers to just double check. Hey, did I go too far?
Absolutely. Yeah. And ask beforehand, right? Like, you can test it with a few people and say, like, hey, what do you think about that? I mean, Blake and I like frequently send Blake, hey, what do you think of this opening tweet? Do you think this is interesting? Do you think it's pandering? Do you think it's cringy? Like, how do you react to this? I ask my wife all the time before I put, like, would this make you want to open this up and read this? So, like, find people that are kind of balanced sources that will give you, reasonable feedback.
Cool. Next one. So I put interesting just because I always found this interesting personally. What's the difference between quote tweets and retweets? Which one's more valuable? Which one do you want? Which one should you do? All that kind of stuff. So quote tweets are more valuable than retweets, in my opinion, for both sides. So if it's you doing it, if you're quote tweeting someone else's content, one, you show up in the person's feed, especially if it's a larger account that you're trying to network with or get on their radar. Just being honest, like, there's a lot of retweets, and they are in your feed they're just categorized. It'll say like, 50 people retweeted this. And it's just the little profile icon. So there's no real easy way to tell who that is. Quote tweets are quite the opposite. They come through your feed, your notification feed, with that person's face and whatever comment they had to say about your tweet above your tweet. So they stand out. The point is they stand out much more when you're looking through notifications. So for instance, if I have a thread that goes viral and let's say it gets 5,000 retweets, 10,000 retweets, but out of that 300, let's say, are quote tweets, I am much more likely to see the quote tweets, interact with the quote tweets, retweet the quote tweets myself if they're thoughtful and engaging. So just point is, you guys get the point. Quote tweets carry more value. You can go on to the next one, Rob. I think that's good on that one. So why do people quote tweet things? Kind of similar to retweets. If you have unique perspectives, controversial opinions, fresh ideas, new way of thinking. The two I wanted to highlight here is one, promoting others. If you want to do something nice for somebody, if you want to help them out, don't just retweet their stuff, quote tweet it. If you're really trying to do them a favor and highlight their work, quote tweets allow you the opportunity to say what you thought was valuable. Now, on the contrary, quote tweets are also the place where if you incite enough emotion from people, this is where they will tell you you're a moron. So this is where people love to dunk on you and, say you're wrong, say you don't know what you're talking about, call out errors that you've made if you make an error. I think Sahil touched on this yesterday. I commented to a couple people in the community over the last couple days. Man, one thing you got to do is you got to have some thick skin in this game. It's just the way it is. If you're going to put yourself out there, if you're going to write stuff and try and grow a following, there's going to be people that disagree with you, that don't like what you have to say. And let's face it, there's a lot of internet, keyboard warriors out there. It's pretty easy to say mean, hurtful, degrading things behind a keyboard. So, it just comes with the territory. All right,
So,
Sahil.
yeah, I mean, how long should this take is like a common question that I hear a lot. How much time should I be spending on this? And first off, I would say it's case dependent, relative to your own circumstances, right? Like when I first started, I was trying to do it alongside a job that was pretty intense. If you have, less time to do it, you need to set up a system that allows you to put out, high quality content every week. If you have more time and you feel like you can dedicate more time to it, you can put out more and try to do it that way. So I would establish kind of a cadence and a system that you feel like you can be consistent around first. And then as you think about the amount of time you're going to spend on this, I would say, a good thread, a good longer form piece of content will take, especially when you're first starting out, probably up to a couple of hours. If there's research involved, it can be more than that. I mean, if I'm doing something that's like involving real research and I have to read a bunch of things, I'd say it ends up taking me 4+ hours probably total to really spend time on things, fact check, etc. Make sure that I feel good about the quality of it. If it's things I already know and it's like earned insights that I'm just kind of putting down onto paper and writing, it might be 30 minutes, but somewhere in that like kind of 60-minute range is probably the average for what I would think about kind of time to dedicate to a single piece of content that you're putting out. Again, as I mentioned yesterday, I would always think about the ROI as you're doing this. You won't know the ROI on different types of content until you try a bunch of different things. So it's going to require you kind of being in the arena and testing a bunch of stuff out to figure out what those ROIs are. Tweets per week, I mentioned it. I would always try to aim for one as a baseline, one longer form thing per week. And then if you have one-off ideas or things that you want to put out there as insights during the interim periods in between those, that's great. I would establish kind of a day and time that you typically post that one longer form piece of content. For me, it's weekend mornings. That just happens to be when I have time to write. And as I mentioned, I think evergreen content gets consumed more frequently on the weekends. But if weekdays are the time when you think more people will see your content and engage with it, totally fine to kind of just pick a day. But I would try to establish a cadence. The biggest thing with that is just building like a consistent, almost like routine with your followers of when you are going to be posting things. Someone that did this really well was this account 10K Diver. He's like finance explainer account, incredible content. And he hasn't done it quite as much recently, but for the first probably year that he was around to build his following, it was like grab a cup of coffee was his whole thing. And it was Saturday morning. You knew that he was going to put out a thread that just said, grab a cup of coffee. I'm going to teach you about this. And it was awesome because you knew there was just a routine that was built up every Saturday and people were waiting for it. And then they would share it immediately and it built up this relationship. So try to do that. That's affinity building. And that's really sticky followers.
As a few people in this course are just starting out, should they be thinking about sort of debut content? Or should the first tweets that they post and threads that they post be just the same as they would have if they'd been there on Twitter for the last 5 years?
Blake?
For me, yeah, I guess the answer depends on if they have a specific topic that they've already narrowed down that they're going to write about. Then I'm kind of a fan of fake it till you make it, act like you've been there, act like you've been doing it for a while. So I would tell them to post, don't phone it in because you got 100 followers or you'll never get to 1,000, I guess is what I would say. So on the contrary, if they're still struggling with topic selection, then I guess, what do you mean more by like introductory tweet? Like, what are you?
Yeah, let's
see. Introduce yourself.
Who asked that question?
Yeah.
Do you want to unmute? I've lost you now. Who it was?
So I think it was just like if you're starting out in your first few threads, like you don't have that following to get a ton of engagement probably yet. Was there a strategy, I guess, like Sahil, when you first did your initial threads, like how did you think about, was it the introducing like the topics you're going to be talking about? Was it introducing yourself? Was it just picking a piece of content? Or was it like a super
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So for me, I did zero like introductory of myself as a person. I didn't do much of that. I more just picked a few different topics and started to write on, like, I put out some business related stuff. I'd put out some life advice related stuff. I more just started trying a few different topics to see which ones resonated, and then kind of crafted a persona or a Twitter profile from there. But I didn't do a lot of like, here's who I am, this is what I'll write about, this is what I'm going to do type of stuff. And that's just me personally.
We should come back to this one because I think it'll be informed too by how we talk about like the cold start problem and some of the distribution stuff that we'll get into here in a few minutes. But we should come back to it for sure, and we can workshop some of it. I think it all comes down to like optimize your bio for like who you are, why you have credibility, so that when people click through to you, they can kind of figure all that stuff out. They know who you are, like why you're reputable to be talking about X, Y, or Z. And you don't like, I never really did the kind of like, here I am, here's who I am, etc. I think it's just like, you have to find a way to bash through that first, frankly, like, I don't know, 0 to 1,000, 0 to 5,000 people. And that's what we're going to talk about here in like 5 minutes.
Yep.
And what we're all about to do, of those of us who are not.
Yes. Yeah. We can help with that too. Blake, you want to get into metric? I think we kind of covered this. I mean, stuff
I think we're
time.
good there. Yeah. Okay. So measuring performance, big picture metrics, a couple of things you want to look at is just retweets per tweet and new followers per day. I've just included a couple couple tracking sites, softwares that I think Sahil, I think you use Social Blade. I use ILO. No specific reason, like no affiliation with ILO for me. That's just the one I picked early on, and I'm kind of a creature of habit. I'm a data nerd. I like digging into the numbers and seeing what's going on behind the scenes and trying to tweak things and figure out. And that's what ILO does for me. It just paints a better picture than what Twitter's native analytics do.
So ILO, you can correct me. I think I have like ILO and follower wonk. I think they both have paid things. Social Blade, like I just would recommend to everybody because it's free. And if you just go, you should all do it if you haven't actually. Go to socialblade.com and type in your Twitter handle into the like Twitter search box, and that will either someone has already put it in there for you if you have a bigger account and it'll already have been scraping your data. If it's not, it'll start scraping your data from the time you type it in. So would highly recommend everyone do that because it gives you just like a very simple way to look at follower growth and different things like that over time.
Yep. Okay. Next. Yeah, that one. Okay. Data benchmarks. How do you know if it's going to do well, or at least has a good shot at doing well? Engagement rate. Engagement rate is just the number of engagements divided by impressions, and you can see this in Twitter's native analytics. But a good benchmark there is 10% or more engagement across the first couple thousand impressions. Pretty good chance it's going to do well. How to know it's going to do very well or has a really good shot at doing very well is looking at the number of retweets per like. If that's over 25% or in that neighborhood, just to break it down a little more simplistically, if a big percentage of people that like your tweet are immediately then turning around and sharing it, pretty good shot that's going to take off. So those are a couple of the things. And once you do this for a while, Sahil, you can tell me if you disagree with this. I mean, I generally think when I post a thread, I can tell within the first 10 to 15 minutes if it's going to do good or not. And then that can change later in the life of the thread if a big account happens to engage or retweet it or share it, it can change. But usually in that first few minutes, if you're watching those metrics, you can tell whether it's going to jump or not. A couple just more advanced metrics you can look at is profile visits per impression and new follows per profile visit. So what does that mean? Basically means if for every impression you're getting, how many of those people that are seeing a piece of your content are going to your profile. That simply means that's simply an indicator that they saw something you wrote and had enough interest that they wanted to go to your profile and dig in deeper, see what else is there. So then obviously the next thing you want to look at after that is, okay, out of the people that are hitting my profile, how many of those are actually converting to followers? So those are just a couple more key metrics. So I think this is yours, Sahil.
Yeah, so we've hit on this a few ways, but the way I would think about it, and this comes from the original cohort and has continued to kind of advance through here, is like think of your profile as your landing page, and shout out to Demand Curve because they were the ones that definitely thought of this in this framing. Like if you were a startup, your profile is effectively the landing page of your startup, and you want people to convert through it. Your goal is follower conversion, and so you need to optimize and think about what your profile looks like for someone. Optimize it in a way where people come in and want to convert through to follow you. The handful of things that I would call out here specifically: profile photo. I don't think it matters as much as people think. I think if you want, if you're building a personal brand, it should be like a clear image of you. If you're pseudonymous, if you're in like the Web3 world and you're pseudonymous, totally fine to do there. I do think it makes it slightly more difficult to build a following without a face behind it. It's harder on Twitter. Like Instagram is kind of a platform built for brands to build followers. Twitter is really built around faces and personalities. So something to keep in mind. Web3, because it's so pseudonymous from a cultural standpoint, if you're building your following within Web3 and you're going to have an NFT or an image that's not you, it generally works and is fine because the culture of that entire follower base is that way. But generally speaking, I would think of it as like a clear image of you. And your cover photo, I don't really think I personally think it's an opportunity to do something interesting. I don't think there's like a one size fits all approach to the cover photo, that kind of the banner that kind of sits at the top. I have a picture from my baseball days that I like. Some people do like a custom graphic that has, like more landing page conversion type stuff, like an arrow pointing down to the follow. I've never seen any data that says that one works better than the other, to be totally honest. Bio is very important. And so we lay out a few guidelines here. The most important thing for your bio to get across is what you write about. Like if someone is going to come to your landing page as your bio, they need to know what they're going to get out of you by like gifting you with their attention in perpetuity by clicking follow. You want them to know exactly what they can expect from you. And so getting that across in some way, especially early on, is very important. I personally think that when you're starting out, the more clear that is, the better. Like my bio for the first probably 100,000 followers I had was something to the effect of like, I write threads about business and finance, like simplifying complex topics around business and finance. And so you would literally come to that, you'd read that and know exactly what you were going to get if you followed me. And I really wasn't kind of straying away from that. So it was literally all you would get from me. So having some clarity around what you tweet about, what you write about, what people can expect from you. The other piece to it is why you're credible to talk about those things is often a good added bonus on top of it. So if you are going to write about, taking the example from yesterday, like global security and an interesting kind of future-oriented global security considerations, saying that you are, the head of global security at Facebook, I'm just making up a thing, would be clearly credibility enhancing to the fact of what you're going to be writing about and talking about. So if you do have something like that, I would highly suggest including it there. If you don't, that's okay. And that's fine. Like I never had, that I was like, that I worked in finance in my bio. So I'm an exception to this, but I think it's an opportunity to enhance the kind of credibility lever here if you have it. The last thing I would say is like completely optional, but add personality around it. I clearly do that. Like I have the thing about giving up a grand slam on television. I just think it's kind of funny, and it's like a funny fact about myself. It's like slightly self-deprecating, also slightly like a flex because it was in a big game, and so it's like add some personality to the thing that you're writing about. Totally optional, but just something to consider. And we should for sure workshop bios tomorrow, Blake, when we get into it.
Yeah, and just to add on, yours just gets better and better too because of that second sentence. Like the longer time goes, the longer you've been waiting for it to land. So just throwing that out there, it just gets better.
Although I do get a lot of people now that don't understand it because my audience is more international now than it was. So, when I first started out and it was more US, everyone understood baseball, but
right.
Now people ask me, like I get asked a lot what it means.
It's a big point scoring play in baseball. Brian F. O'Connor wanted to know more about clean your timeline. Does that mean removing retweets or what's that about?
Yeah. So, sorry, I didn't hit on that. So the way I would think about this is like when someone comes to your page, they can see like a few tweets that sit at the top. Pinning like your most credibility or social proof enhancing tweet to the top is important. So like something either like your introducing yourself piece of like who you are, if that got any traction, or the thing that you've posted that has gotten the most traction. So it has, ideally retweets, some likes, etc. If you don't have anything like that, totally fine to just pin something that sort of explains who you are and what you're going to be writing about. And then once you do, coming out of this course, and you do something and it goes, either mini or mega viral, pin that to the top, because when people come and see it, they're like, oh, this person's legit. It triggers that in your mind. Cleaning your timeline below that just means don't have I don't want to go to someone's page, think they're going to be writing about a lot of interesting stuff around business and finance, and then, see some random junk tweet, retweet of, I don't know, a joke that I don't agree with, or that is off, just something that's kind of way off the fairway of what they just said they were going to write about. It's important to kind of have those first few things that people see be in line with what you said you were going to be talking about.
So if you wanted to retweet that joke, then do you go back to your timeline and is there a technique to hide it from your timeline? I'm trying to think of.
I mean, honestly, I would just think about
don't.
as you're starting out, just try to keep your timeline as clean as possible.
Got it.
Things that you say you're going to be writing about, stick to those.
Yep.
And if it is that you're going to write about sports and business, that's fine. And you can have things that are sports and business, but just randomly having some, politics thing when I say that I'm going to be writing about finance and it's a hot take on Donald Trump or something like that, fine. I can go, talk to my friends about that. Totally understand you have, values, things you're interested in outside of what you're writing about. But if you were a startup and your startup was, a healthcare startup, you wouldn't post something that's completely unrelated to healthcare on your landing page. So just use that as kind of a frame of what to focus on here.
Awesome. Here we have some bios.
Yeah, so Wes's is a good example of this. She says, tweeting spiky points of view on education, community, and marketing. So I know exactly what she's going to write about. Co-founder of Maven. Now I'm like, oh, okay, she's a co-founder of a startup that I've heard of. Super interesting. Previously co-founder of Alt MBA, also heard of it. Seth Godin was involved with that. That's pretty cool. She was a co-founder of another thing. So what it triggers for me when I see it is I know what she's going to talk about. I know she's credible to talk about those things. She has a bunch of followers, so I look at it naturally. And then she has this thing with her geo tag that points to her newsletter, which you can do, interesting things like that if it grabs you. So, yeah, that's where my head goes to it.
Yep.
And we'll do some workshopping of these. In the interest of time, though, let's jump forward to some of the tactics stuff. So this is my overarching strategy around Twitter and Twitter growth. Two pieces: creating great content and then hustling for distribution. I think I've said this or mentioned it before. One without the other, you're going to stall out. Great content, but you don't do anything around distribution, will go nowhere. Literally, you'll be shouting into a void. Great distribution with kind of crappy content, you might start going somewhere and then you'll fall off. You'll hit a wall very quickly. Some people manage to do it for a little while, but it's really, really hard to sustain kind of crummy content with just distribution hacks. So think of this as a framing. You need both, and you need to focus on both. There needs to be a strategy around both. This is just a kind of kitschy image for that. You're building a fire of great content, and then the distribution is the gasoline to throw on top of that to make it roar. Cool, Blake.
Okay, so now we're gonna just go through an example of one of my threads, and then I think Sahil's got one of his, just to kind of show how we build a thread. So for me, for one of the tactical threads that I do, there's kind of a 4-step process I follow. So one, I'm personally a fan of very short, straightforward hooks, and then a direct opening to the first lesson, visual aids, and then you get into your content or your content loop and your call to action. So I'll just go through each one of those. So first, this is about as short and straightforward as it gets. But Excel has a huge addressable market. Tons of people use Excel. So if I say, hey, here's 10 features, every single user. So I'm saying everybody should know this. That's about all people need to know is in regard to this type of content is, hey, here's 10 features of this software that everybody should know. That's it. And then the second one, what I mean by this is just a mistake, in my opinion, that I see a lot of people make. So when I say a direct opening to the first lesson, I mean a direct opening to the first lesson. I go from the hook to the very first thing. One thing I see a lot of people do is, and this is more, not so much in tactical threads like this, but more like a story type of thread, is people will write a hook and then they'll have 2 or 3 tweets talking about what they're going to talk about, like lead-in tweets. So for me, what I always tell people is, man, you can have your hook, and maybe if there's one tweet after that that you feel like you need to explain something, or flesh it out a little bit to make it more clear, but man, get to the meat of what you want to talk about pretty quick, or else you're going to lose people between if they read a hook and then 5 tweets talking about what you're going to talk about, they're going to drop off before you ever get there. So next thing, this in my world, I think just more, you got to think about it specific to your content. So for me, I'm a big fan of GIFs. I use them in every tactical thread I do, but it's more from a functional standpoint. One, I'm a nerd. I think they look kind of cool. 2, I think I'm just laughing at Sahil laughing, because anyone that says a GIF of a spreadsheet looks cool is probably the definition of a nerd. But I'm looking at, so there's more to it than that. So what I'm trying to do here is, one, you've only got 280 characters, right, to type in Twitter and explain how to do something in a software. So even if you're trying to explain something simple, 280 characters just isn't a lot of room. So kind of the hack that I found to work my way around that was try and give a short summary in text of, here's what I'm going to show you how to do, and then give a visual representation of me actually doing that. And people seem to like it. Then in this same GIF, you can keep it here, Rob. In the same GIF, it's a little hard to see, but when you get down to the bottom, and Sahil will talk about this more in his example, you get into my call to action at the end, where I link to a newsletter, or you could link to your brand, or you could link to your podcast, whatever you want to drive people towards. And then that's also a place that if you don't have a brand or a podcast or something else, you can include pieces of content that you've written previously and link to them there, just to keep people in the loop of your content.
Like, do you recommend a specific tool for creating GIFs?
I'll get into those in a minute. I got a list of them in a slide coming up here in a minute.
Yeah, and then for me, I mean, I personally, I write the hook last. I find that to be the most effective. I never like getting held up on writing the I sort of think of it as the headline of an article, and I don't want the headline to guide the entire piece. I want the headline to be kind of a result of what the content comes out to be. And so I'll write the thread, and for me, it's always something that follows like a narrative arc. And this doesn't include things that I do that are more like numbered, like listicles, for lack of a better way to say it. But for kind of more narrative based threads that I will do, it always follows a clear narrative arc. There's kind of a build up, definitions, establish the base, kind of go to a climax of some sort. It's really like a story arc, and then come down and kind of a conclusion, finish, takeaways, etc., summary, sort of like, here's what I'm going to tell you it, and then here's what I just told you, as like a general arc. And then I go back to the hook and I think about like, okay, what is something that ties to the piece of content that I just wrote that will make someone want to click on this and read more about it. And I personally have gone shorter and shorter over time. Like my original threads, if you go back to the very beginning of the content I would produce, were longer and more content rich. I still think they were pretty good, but they were longer. I have personally just like skewed towards shorter and shorter things. I think Twitter in general has kind of followed my lead in some ways in that, because people see things that work and go to that. I've basically the way I think about Twitter hooks now is that they're like the headline to my article. I actually don't care if I don't really say anything in them. I just want someone to click so that they'll kind of start reading and convert down. Generally speaking, if you can get people to read to the second tweet, you've kind of grabbed someone and they'll click down through the whole thing. And so the whole trick is just making them actually see it. I've always had an impression that really dense, content rich first tweets were a bad idea because they just look a little intimidating. And I personally, like, my attention span is very, very low. And I think all of us, like, societally, attention spans have gotten lower over time. And so when you see something that's like really dense and has a bunch of words in it and it's all blocked together, I just won't read it. Like, I just continue scanning and move to the next thing. So you'll notice that, and I think that plays out for me in terms of like actual body tweets as well. I always space things out a ton. There's very rarely more than like one idea in a single block, and then I'll do like a hard enter down so that you can actually space it out to the next line. That's all strategic, and it's all designed to be kind of native to the way that people want to consume content on Twitter as a platform. I don't do that necessarily in newsletters or longer form content, but with Twitter, you want it to be really inviting. You want it to be really short, and just grab people with one idea at a time. So just a quick example. I mean, this is one that I think it's pretty recent, about a month ago. And one of the more like introspective things I had done. And so it was just 11 harsh truths that changed my life. And then and may change yours. Kind of just like grabs you, hopefully converts people through to actually read what is in the body. There was a clear narrative to it, and a clear format to it. So I mentioned like spacing things out, right? This is what I mean. Like the hard enters down so that it doesn't look like just, if I condensed that into one block of text, it would look like a lot and it would be a little more intimidating than with it spaced out where it feels like you can read it and engage with it. And then the closing, which Blake mentioned, this is an opportunity to do two things. One, to convert people through to followers. So highly, highly recommend having a call to action at the end of a thread that just says, if you enjoyed this, some form of, if you enjoyed this, follow me for more, writing on X, Y, or Z, or here's what you'll get, basically like restate what people are going to get from following you. The call to action, like 10x pluses conversion through to followers, data backed. Like it is massively impactful, having it at the end of things, because you basically just ask them there, you tag yourself so people can just click on it and follow you through. It's like an absolute must to do that. And then I always take the opportunity to use this to funnel people to my more owned audience. So I will always link to my newsletter at the end of this. And what I'll generally find is, like, if I put out a thread that is pretty, viral for me, is like something that goes over 20,000 likes probably at this point. Like 20,000 likes reliably will drive like maybe 500 new subscribers to my newsletter. If it goes much bigger than that, it might drive 1,000 new subscribers to my newsletter. And 1,000 newsletter subscribers is worth a lot, just like when you think about the opportunities that creates. And so you basically can like hack your way into building a newsletter audience on the back of viral Twitter content. So it's a great way to just create a loop that goes through. And I typically, by the way, will enhance the conversion to the newsletter by saying what I said here, which is like, I'll write a deep dive on this topic in my newsletter. So now someone that liked this thread that just read it, it's not just like, hey, I write a newsletter, in which case, yeah, maybe I, like you enough to do that. Maybe I don't. If they liked this specific tweet and they sign up, they're going to get a deeper dive on it. So it's like a very clear link in their mind of exactly why they should subscribe to my newsletter here. Looser connections, it tends to be harder to convert people through.
Hey, Rob.
I saw the question from Brian of, does linking hurt you? So we'll hit common Twitter mistakes in a couple slides, I think, Blake. But if it's deep down in a thread like this, it won't hurt at all. It's linked all the way at the end of my threads. If you link in the first tweet of something to something off platform, the Twitter algorithm immediately scuttles it. So, if you like, if you have this big thread you're going to do and you like link to a personal article or essay that you wrote in the first tweet in the hook, it's pretty much guaranteed to go nowhere, no matter how many retweets it gets out of the gate.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Can you jump to 135? I know.
It's
Yeah, I know.
it's
I said it's a curveball. I
all
know
right.
Sahil's got a jump here.
We can let's stick rolling through it.
Okay,
If
you good?
Yeah, I have this is kind of an embarrassing thing. We have our first child due like any day, and the like final thing for our nursery is arriving, and I have to be the one to receive it. So if I see a truck pull up, I
Okay,
think we're good for now.
cool. I just want you. I wanted you to have a chance to hit the newsletter section because you're a lot farther along on that
that's
than
fine.
me. So
Yeah.
okay, cool.
We can always workshop it too, but yeah. Cool.
I-
So threads, we talked about this. Threads are the key. I don't think we need to spend a ton more time here. This is the real key. Hooks. We'll do some auditing of hooks too in the workshop tomorrow. This is always a good one. Blake, you want to hit this and we can talk a little bit more about what makes great hooks?
Sure. And I've been one thing I would ask is in the community, if you guys want me to look at a hook, I've looked at a few. Just make sure to tag me in the community so I make sure and see them. If you guys want me to look at it, I'm happy to do it. I just want to make sure I don't miss them. So what makes a good hook? These are just a few common things. So relatable subject matter, that's pretty simple. You want to do things. I like to use Sahil's example here for relatable subject matter. If you want to improve at anything, that's relatable to literally everyone. Everyone wants to get better at something. Doesn't matter what it is. So just right there in the very first few words, he's captured your attention. It's relatable. And then he says, I'm going to tell you how to do it. And here's the plan. So, man, you read that and immediately you say, man, I want to get better. This guy's going to tell me how to do it. Oh, and he's got a plan. So you're going to click on that. Pretty simple. So the other couple things is attention grabbing and emotion inducing, which we talked about earlier. I like Anna's example for that is, when I read this, I see dangerous lessons taught in school. And I think, I've got a 7-year-old kid. I think, what the hell do you mean dangerous lessons taught in school? What are they teaching my kid that I don't know about? Or maybe I'm a teacher and think, what is she talking about? We're not teaching dangerous lessons. So either side of the coin you're on, that grabs your attention. It brings about emotion. It makes you click. And then the other one is, concise. We've talked about all of these examples are concise. We're not telling you the whole story. We're giving you enough to make you interested and make you want to find out the rest of the story. The last couple is just, tell people what they stand to gain or lose and try and solve their pain. I'll use mine for this. An insane amount of people use Google Chrome. So if you say, hey, here's some features that might be hidden, you might not know about, and they're guaranteed to make your life easier. So if I look at that, I'm going to say, hey, I use Chrome and I'd like my life to be easier. Cool. I'll check this out. And then from there, kind of the line I always, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the line and I'm not going to say that I always accomplish this. I try, but doesn't mean I always hit the mark. But the line I kind of draw in the sand between clickbait and not is it's only clickbait if people are disappointed when they read the rest of it and they don't get any value from it. If they read it initially and it sounds clickbaity perhaps, but then they click into the body of it and they really get some value out of it, they're no longer worried about it being like the concern about it being clickbait goes away. People only get mad and say this was clickbait when they click in and there's a bunch of junk in the body. So I think next we had an exercise. This is in the project doc, and I think
we'll go through these tomorrow. Maybe do it. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe do this after, and we can go through some examples tomorrow in workshops.
Yep.
Just want to make sure we have time to get to newsletter stuff. You've seen this. Yeah, you've seen
Yeah.
you've seen that
Yeah.
quote. I don't know. Mark Twain is the most over and incorrectly quoted person in the world. Like every single quote is attributed to him, and most of them are not actually him. So I have no clue whether this is really him or not, to be honest. But I do love this. Love this. Blake, you want to
Okay.
talk drafting and
Yeah.
typefully?
Yeah. So I think Rob asked this, and I've seen this a lot in the community. So there's a few different tools for drafting out there. I use Typefully. There's Hype Fury, TypeShare, and then Drafting Native in Twitter. And then, like Sahil said, he uses some janky thread thing from 1996 that
I just
don't
sent
know.
it. I just sent it to the group. If there are any old-fashioned people out there,
So, man, for me personally, I like Typefully. It's pretty simple to use, and it's free. They have some paid tiers that unlock, some different, analytical type stuff you can do with it, or analytics based stuff you can do. But the base platform is free. The other thing that's cool about it, although it's read only, it does have the ability where you can share links to drafts of threads that you write with other people. Like I said, the only bad part is it's read only. So for me, I've seen this question in the community a bit. For me, I either text people, like I text back and forth with Sahil on ideas, or if I'm having somebody look at like the full thread and helping me edit it, I just use Google Docs, nothing fancy. I think the advantages to Hype Fury and that I see people talk about quite a bit, and TypeShare, I think those two platforms, I'm not sure if TypeShare has it yet, but I think they're working on it. I think the advantage people like about them, the primary thing I hear, is that you can post to multiple platforms. So you can write one piece of content and then feed it out to, a blog or LinkedIn or Twitter. Like you can do it automated behind the scenes. I personally haven't used either one of those. So that's just some feedback I've heard from other people I talked to about why they've chosen those applications. So mistakes. What do people do wrong? You go ahead and go to the next one, Rob. So some common things I see, and I've talked about this in some of the Q&A the last couple of days and in the community, but number one is just mentioning too much in the first tweet. If you start it off with an nobody sees it. It goes back to that person that you've tagged. But Twitter, and so you could correct me if I'm wrong here, I think Twitter views it as a reply. So it basically just goes back to the person that you're tagging and nobody else sees it.
Yeah, a lot of people make this mistake. You if it's just the first thing that happens in a tweet, the only people that see it are people that follow both of you. Like it's the other person and then people that follow both of you. So it massively narrows the number of people that will actually see it. It's just viewed as almost like a direct message that you're sending to somebody.
Okay, linking off platform, we've touched on this. The main place you want to avoid that is in the opening tweet. It's pretty much like Sahil said a minute ago, it's pretty much a guarantee it'll go nowhere. Perfectly fine to link to things later on in the body of your thread, or mostly in the call to action. Just avoid it in the opening. I added this one in, too in your face trying to sell. I got to ask this, I think yesterday in the Q&A, about people, trying to build a brand account. For me, I think you can write an interesting piece, an interesting topic, and then in the body of it, say, hey, here's a problem. Here's 10 steps to solve it. And somewhere in the body of that thread, I think you can say, hey, here's what so-and-so, and link to, your brand or your course or whatever it is that, this is how they're trying to address this issue. That sounds much less salesy, because you're giving people some tactical things that they can go through. That sounds much less salesy than just an upfront, hey, buy my thing, whatever it is. So that's what I mean there, is find a way. There's more than one way to get at a sale, right? If that's your goal. So just find a way to work it into actually good content rather than just putting it in people's face. Poor formatting, lack of attention to detail. Man, I don't know any other way to say this other than the way shit looks matters. If you're putting out just giant blocks of text, you gotta, what I always tell people is look at this like you were gonna read it. Would you actually read this if it wasn't yours? Like people get blinded, and I've been guilty of this. You get blinded by, you think it's great, you think it reads well because it's yours and you're invested in it. But you got to do your best. This is why the community is so important, and sending it to other people and having new eyes look at it, is they can look at it pretty quickly and say, man, this is a long run-on sentence. These two don't flow well together, things like that. So, and then just from a formatting perspective, Sahil talked about this earlier. I'm also a fan of just, spacing things out, varying the size of your sentences, just making things choppy, where they, in your brain, you kind of start and stop when you're reading it, and that makes you keep going. One thing I always tell people is if you read it out loud to yourself and you stumble when you're reading it, if you stumble like I just did, if you stumble when you're saying it out loud, odds are people will stumble in those same spots when they're reading it. So that's just kind of an easy way to identify spots that don't flow that well. No distribution strategy. We've talked a lot about that. That's hopefully what you guys are working on building behind the scenes in the community of this course, is you've got to network with people. Great content. You've got to get people to interact with it and engage with it, comment on it, in order to get more people to see it. That's probably the biggest thing I personally took away from taking the first cohort of this, was I focused heavily on building a network of people that I could interact with their stuff, and I knew they would interact with mine. Over tagging large accounts. Lucky for me, I guess I've made it now to what is considered to be a large account. So I get asked this a lot. I don't mind when people tag me, as long as it's not just for the sake of tagging me. The mistake I see people make is they'll write a thread and they'll tag 20 different people in it throughout the thread. And then what ends up happening on the backside of that is I just get notification after notification after notification. And that's okay if the content is actually like relevant to me. It's something I've written about or something I've shown interest in, and you want to tag me in that, cool. Where people make a mistake is just tagging people what seems to be randomly, just in the hopes that someone with a big following will engage. You'll have a lot better luck in just sending them things that actually relate to them or pertain to them, and getting them to engage. Lack of consistency. I feel like we've beat that horse to death. You got to be consistent. It's that simple. Spamming DMs. I'm a good poster child for that. This was a solid that Sahil did to me early on, and I'll just be completely transparent. So one of the things I was doing early on was I crafted like a short message I would use in DMs, send it out to people, and in an effort to get them to engage. And I was just copying and pasting the same message to a bunch of accounts, right? And Sahil sent me a DM one day and just said, man, don't do this. One, comes off as spammy. Two, you can get shadow banned by Twitter for it's actually against the Twitter rules to just spam people's DMs. So we can go on. I think I get into DMs more later on, Rob. So I can dig into that later.
Yeah, they'll detect if you send the same message to multiple people, is what he's saying.
So a couple more. Just common thread mistakes. We've talked about these, just giving too much away in the opening tweet. Don't tell me the whole story in the hook, or I have no reason to open it. Then the second one is this is just one. I think I mentioned this in some of the Q&A yesterday. Early on, I had a thread that I put a lot of time into, thought it was pretty good. And it was 36, 37 tweets long. And I think I sent it to Sahil and just said, what the hell, man? I don't see all of it. And he said, yeah, Twitter cuts it off at 25. And what we mean by cut it off is it basically dumps it into a section where it says show replies, which just the odds of people clicking that and then seeing the rest of your thread is pretty slim. And especially if you've got your call to action past 25, no one's going to get where you really want them to get. They're not going to get to your newsletter. They're not going to get to your brand. They're not going to get to your call to action to follow them. So you've basically done a lot of work to not get people where you're trying to get them. So okay, I think that.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I see my face.
No, you're good.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we've talked about this distribution, and so we want to get into actually what we mean by that and some of the actual tactics and how you can make this work. So these are just a handful of them. So comments, direct DMs in the right way, which we'll get into the right way. Engagement groups, leveraging the community, kind of creating, like I think of it as like growth pods around this stuff, and then trending topics. I mentioned it. I mean, this was critical for me early on. I discovered it accidentally when I had like commented underneath Chamath's thing and he retweeted it. I started realizing like, oh, you can kind of hack your way into some growth early on when not a lot of people had seen it. But figuring out a few tactics here, and basically when you post something, having a distribution strategy for that thing in the same way that you had a content strategy for it is how I would think about this. Yeah, so let's get into it, Blake.
Okay, so these are just a couple examples. Let me look at.
I don't think we need to like.
Yeah.
Let's just skip through the examples. Go
skip
straight
that
to the
example.
hack distribution.
I've got a better. I got a better example later on anyway. So hacking distribution.
These, yeah.
The stuff that Sahil just talked about.
Yep.
Yeah. Hack distribute. Okay, comments. Just some general rules here. Pick 2 to 3 big accounts. This is exactly what I did. This is what worked for me. I picked 2 to 3 large accounts that I wanted to build rapport with and turn on notifications for those people. Then, engage with their posts via comments and quote tweets. For me, turning on notifications was important because stands to reason, large accounts get lots of comments. So what my goal was to try and be one of the first people that commented. Pretty simple thinking here. If they just posted it and I could be one of the first people that commented on it and commented with something of value, don't just say cool thread, bro. That we get plenty of that. I would try and comment with something of value and be one of the first people that comments, because my reasoning was if they just posted it, they're probably still looking at it. So I thought that would increase the likelihood a great deal of them actually seeing my content and engaging with it.
And a lot of people will see it, right? Beyond that main person. If Mark Cuban tweets something, or back in the day, Chamath, when people liked him, if he tweeted something, a lot of people were going to engage with it and see it. And so if you posted something insightful, whether it's, putting in one of your pieces of content that's particularly related, or putting some new insight or new nuance to what they had just said, a lot of people would see that way more than if you just tweeted it out, especially when you have a few hundred followers or a couple thousand followers. You're going to get way more eyes on your account by doing something like this. So I used to use TweetDeck for doing this when I was first starting. And I would I had a list of, TweetDeck is like an app that's built on top of Twitter. I think they own it. And you can create a list, like a specific list for you of, I would suggest find the 10 or 20 accounts that are highly relevant, that have big followings and high engagement around the type of content that you're typically going to write in, your future audience, if you could envision it. And if you just have that up somewhere, and you can see when those people post things, you could be pretty quick to be under them and in the comment section. I personally think there's you need to balance this with your own life. Like when I was first doing it, I was pretty aggressive with it, like on Saturdays, because that was when I had time to do things. I've seen people do it pretty effectively, like at all times, and I can't imagine them being able to do anything else in their entire life. Meme accounts have been built on the back of this, like the Parik Patel account, who I know the actual guy behind it. I mean, he's a student, and he literally just spent all day, every day for a while as he was building his following, commenting under large accounts. But this was how he did it. Like have a tweet deck up, be able to comment under things really quickly. So figure out a strategy around this that works for you and that you can replicate.
Yep. A couple other things there. Just leveraging your network. We've talked about. Once you build that community, that's the quickest way to drive engagement off the start, is to communicate with people ahead of time. Let them know, hey, I'm going to post something at such and such time, and get them to gauge. I think Sahil mentioned this earlier, but the more engagement you can get kind of in that first hour window, really helps to kickstart the algorithm. So,
and Chris asked about TweetDeck. The reason TweetDeck is helpful, I find, is because it you can create a column in TweetDeck that just has the tweets of that list, and it's chronological, versus Twitter's main screen is all over the place. They change it all the time. You might miss things that people post from one of your lists. So this allows like your list to have a chronological feed, so that immediately when those people tweet.
we can go to the next one, Rob. We've talked about other items. So trends, I think we touched on this a little bit yesterday. I think Sahil touched on it, but just keep your eyes open. Things change a lot. When you see something that works, you can use it, with one caveat: if it's not too cringy. I mean, it's all up to you what you want to post on your account, but you can see, like Sahil spoke about yesterday on hooks, especially, you'll see what works. You'll see things that are getting traction, and then you can take a variation of those and make them less cringy and use them for yourself and keep the same basic structure. But what works today may not work tomorrow. And I just threw a couple examples in there. I know Sahil did this early on, was all caps thread, and he doesn't do it anymore. Because I think 500, not everyone else started doing that. So things become commoditized, right? That once everyone starts doing it, it doesn't hold the same value that it held originally. Same thing with the thread emoji. I used to use that. I think Sahil has hated that since the beginning of time.
I have never done it. Seriously, I've never done it. Yeah.
I was like, I don't think you ever liked that one, but I use that one for a while. I don't use it anymore. The other thing people do is they'll start muting stuff like that if they're not a fan of threads. So you just gotta, change. The point here is change up what you're doing a little bit. And the last two are just a couple examples of like things that have worked for a while, like the whole, better than a college degree, Twitter is free university. Most people suck at X. The point here is just, keep an eye on what's working, and then you can iterate and take variations of that, and they should work for you too. Okay, next, this is getting more into the DMs. Hustle does not equal bother people. So go ahead and go to the next one, Rob. So like we said, pick a few accounts that are relevant. The key here is relevant. DM your best content to those accounts, only if it's in their sphere of what they talk about, what they write about, what they work in, what's interesting. Already talked about spamming DMs, so I think the next one, Rob, is a good example. So this is one that I did personally that I just thought was a good example. So Jim O'Shaughnessy, blue check mark account, 150,000 followers. I think at the time I sent this, I had less than 10,000 followers, I think. So basically, Jim just happened to see a piece that I wrote. I saw that he followed me, and just sent him a simple message and said, hey man, appreciate the follow, simply wanted to say thanks. The point here is, you'll notice I did not ask him for anything. I just said, thanks, appreciate, you following me. And, he said, hey, wish I would have found you earlier. Keep the great threads coming. Cheers. So to me, that opened the window a little bit. That opened the door that, hey, he's got some interest in my content. He's following me. So, a few days later, a week later, whenever it was, the next thread I posted, was this story about, the limping lady of Leon, which was this female spy that had a pretty cool story. And from looking at some of Jim's content, I knew he was a history buff. He liked history. So, I thought, hey, this might be something he would actually read, on his own time. So I DM'd him. And just the things I wanted to point out here was, I just said, hey, no, you're a history buff. So here's, that's why I think you might like this. Thought it might be up your alley. And then I followed up with, hey, if you prefer I not DM these to me, please tell me. I'm totally cool with this, with not sending these to you, and I don't want to spam you. And his response was great. He said, no, I like the prompt. You'll see, I feel no obligation to retweet things. In fact, I retweeted this one before I even saw this message. So that to me, so now, now I had an open door policy with Jim is, he's taken the concern from my side of whether it's okay to DM him this stuff when it applies to him. And then he's also told me, hey, I feel no obligation. So I'm going to tweet. I'll share it if I like it. I won't if I won't. So to me, this is the kind of relationship you're trying to build, where there's an open door. People are open to you sharing, and you understand they will or they won't, depending on if it resonates. Okay, so community. Hold on here. This was just kind of, we've talked about this quite a bit. I just threw this in here at the end just to say, hey man, we're all in this together. I was pretty reluctant, maybe would be the word, at the beginning, that I was super nervous about reaching out to people, DMing them stuff, just because I was so aware of, big accounts probably just get a ton of stuff thrown at them. So,
yeah, I mean, I would find, like, the whole thing with community is to find a small group of people outside of, you can have your kind of extended circle, but find like a small group of people that you kind of share a goal and that you're working towards something similar with. I mean, I mentioned it in the chat, I think on Monday or on Tuesday on our first day. Someone, I don't remember who it was, but I was like, it was at the same time that I was trying to grow. I had 20,000 followers, and there were a handful of us who kind of got connected through, like, we were all committed to trying to like grow our audience and our scale on Twitter. And it was, all of us were at a similar size range at the time. And it was like me, Julian Shapiro, Greg Eisenberg, and Sean Puri, I think, at the time. And I think we were all like at a similar size range, and maybe Nick was in, I don't know, but it was like, we became a friend group, and we'd be chatting about random things that were happening in the market, or at the time it was craziness in markets and business, and they were doing different startups. So it was just like an interesting group, but we were all writing a bunch. And so we'd share things we were writing, and we'd all engage with it. We weren't like retweeting each other's stuff into our audiences, but we'd engage with it because people shared stuff and they were interesting pieces of writing. We knew it was high quality. And because of that, like, we ended up getting a lot, like throwing a lot of fuel on the fire as we were starting out and as we were growing. And they've become some of my closer friends, and now I spend a lot of time with them. And it was like Twitter friends becoming friends in real life, in a big way. But it was like, we didn't have huge accounts at the time. We had reasonable size, 10, 15, 20,000, I think most of us, but we all had kind of like a shared goal and a shared mission. And so it was fun to kind of have a group that you were doing that with. Someone asked, how do you engage with others if your niches and vectors don't align? I mean, look, I think the standard here is like, if you're good faith interested in something, like, if someone writes about something that I have zero interest in and they ask me to engage and I don't even want to read it, like, I'm not going to engage with it. If it's something that I'm just so, like, I get there's someone I know very well who's like was big in kind of the public health, like COVID related content. And he would ask me a lot of time. He would share a lot of my stuff, and then he would ask me to share things he had written. And I was always pretty clear with him, like, look, first off, I don't want to kind of like invite the ire that this topic brings because it's very polarizing. A lot of people will just start yelling at me. It's not my lane. It's not what I write about. It's not what I talk about. And it's not, frankly, like it just wasn't something I was really interested in, like the daily news of COVID at the time. And so I didn't, I mean, I never really engaged with that content, but like, you're a curious person. I'm assuming all of you are, and you're trying to grow in different ways. And so reading about things you don't know yet, I generally find interesting, barring some of those areas. So I would just think about, engaging with things that you genuinely are interested in and engaging in a genuine way where you're like, oh, this was interesting. I found this neat. What about this? Question things, etc. And engaging doesn't mean retweeting, by the way. Like you don't, if something is very relevant for your audience, I would have a high bar for retweeting things. If it's super relevant to the people that follow you and you think it's going to be really additive to them and that they will, that it'll increase their trust in following you. Like it will make them say, wow, I'm glad this person shared this thing because now I'm smarter in the thing that I was trying to learn about. That's a great reason to retweet something. If it's just trying to help a friend, do something for a friend, I would personally lean towards keeping your timeline clean. If it's not going to make your followers smarter and make them better off, I mean, you'll see, like I very rarely retweet anything, very, very rarely. There's a very high bar. So I mean, I would try to adopt a similar standard and keep your timeline clean in that way. I also wouldn't ever ask anyone to retweet something, by the way. Like, if you send something to somebody, I would always avoid saying like, hey, can you read? Like, it'd be great if you retweeted this. It tends to be like if someone sends me something and asks me that, I almost just don't read it because it feels presumptuous to me. If someone sends something and says like, hey, I think you'll really enjoy this because I've seen you talk about this mental model and I wrote about this angle of it, which I think is an interesting nuance. I'm like really likely to read that now because they've clearly, they've done some research, they've engaged. It's like, it's clearly customized to me. It wasn't just someone spamming 1,000 accounts. And now I'm going to read it. And now if I like it, it's like, oh, the person engaged in good faith. I'll comment on it, engage. And that helps a lot and drives eyes. But if they send it and they're like, hey, I think you'll like this. If you do, please retweet it, which I get probably 50 messages like that every single day. It's, basically a zero conversion on something like that. So I want to talk about some newsletter stuff before the end of today. And we'll have plenty of time tomorrow around workshopping all of the stuff we just talked about with Twitter and getting into questions. Blake, I know you'll be in the community too for different questions around it as well. So on newsletters, the whole thing here is owning your audience. Like you're not going to fall victim to Twitter as a platform, getting deplatformed, Twitter collapsing when it goes private, any of those things, which I view as really low probability, but they exist, and you're kind of renting space from Twitter. When you have emails and you collect an email list, you own that. It's more valuable. It's your highest affinity audience. It's the people that have committed to you in a deeper way than just clicking follow. And this is the audience that ultimately is the audience that, if you're going to release products or if you're going to productize yourself, that's your core audience of it. Jumping to the next page, how do you make your newsletter stand out? There's a million ways to do this, right? There's no one type of newsletter, but you need to think about what you can do consistently. Again, I would say there are kind of two major buckets of newsletter creators. There's like consistent newsletter creators who write a newsletter every single week on a consistent cadence. Like I would bucket, Packy McCormick or Mario at the Generalist into that. They write something high quality every single week. They spend 50, 60 hours a week writing, researching. It's tons of time. It's a full-time job for both of them. Then there are people like Tim Urban who read and think and, live for months on end and then put out one piece that is like a tome. It's unbelievable and it's a tome. And then there's, like the kind of curators, which I generally bucket, like Blake. What Blake has created is like a curation focused newsletter. Typically easier to do from a time commitment standpoint because you're not, it's things you've interacted with during the week. I do that with my Friday newsletter, although I've added the framework thing to make it kind of a little bit of creation, a little bit of curation. creation, like insight heavy creation, like the Packy, Mario, the Tim, will always be the like highest value, stickiest audience newsletter. If you can get people to consistently read things that you're putting out that are your ideas, your insights, your novel creation, that is like the highest value audience you can have. If you can get people to commit to an email because they care about the things that you're reading and listening to or watching, etc., that's valuable, but it's a different level from it. Like, me having 100,000 subscribers to my newsletter is less valuable than Packy's 100,000. And like, I'm completely open about that. It's just a different type of following that you've built. A few things to think about as you do this. What can you reasonably commit to doing at a high quality? It's the same thing as with Twitter. You need to figure out what you can reasonably commit to at the outset. For me, I started mine doing all I was doing with my email list was just sending out my threads in a nicer, kind of cleaner format with images. That was all it was. I gathered like 13,000 emails just off of doing that. Then I decided to start this Friday newsletter that I was going to do with kind of more curation. So I built into it, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to do a deep dive midweek plus that Friday piece. And so I sort of like legged into my cadence over time based on what I thought I could reasonably do. When I started with just the Friday one, it was because I had a full-time job. I was like, I don't have time to continue to write a newsletter, but I know it's really valuable for me to build this email list. Another thing to think about with newsletters that is going to be interesting, and we don't have in the slides, is monetization is going to change fundamentally with newsletters over the next, I'm going to say 6 months, but historically, you've had to have a really large newsletter in order to monetize. Like you'd have to go talk to sponsors or charge people, one or the other. It was like you kind of, if you're going to do the non-subscription newsletter where you're not charging people and it's free, you have to like get to a sufficient scale to convince sponsors. That won't be the case over the next 6 months. There are several people that are now kind of in the works on like ad networks around newsletters, where smaller newsletter creators will be able to access sponsors in a really advantageous way, where if you're building, you might be able to like off ramp from whatever your day job is and go do this as a full-time gig at a smaller scale than you might have historically been able to. The other consideration on monetization is subscriptions. I've never done that. My goal has always been to like reach the most people in the world. I want to reach 1 million people. And so charging people for it at the outset is kind of, it's going to slow that down naturally. Fewer people will pay me every week for my newsletter than would subscribe if it was free. Why in the next 6 months? Because I just don't want to say specifically, but there are a few companies that are going to be rolling out ad networks. I don't know if any of them are public about the fact they're going to be doing that, but it's going to be happening.
I'm actually, I'll share.
What's that?
That's sponsoring some newsletters, and so I've been interacting with some of these, and I'll share some after.
Yeah. I mean, it's there are like, I have a team that kind of does all my sponsors for my newsletter. It's great. You can do it, but it's going to be great when smaller newsletters are able to do this. And frankly, for brands, I actually think smaller newsletters are going to be more rich ROI for them, because I think like at a macro level, you're just paying such high rates for large newsletters. It doesn't make sense in terms of the ROI for a lot of them. Newsletter formats on the next page, I talked about, niche topics being one. Milk Road, I think, is a great example of that. Like they picked a topic around crypto, and Sean and Ben, who write that, basically had the thesis that there was no, daily kind of morning brew or the hustle like content around crypto. And so they went and created that. Curation, Blake's newsletter is a good example of that, a weekly roundup. There's obviously more people that do that type of thing. So you have to figure out a way to stand out if you're going to do that to scale. You can stand out by just converting really well from Twitter to your newsletter. If you grow and you're effective at creating a funnel from one to the other. So some popular newsletter examples. Don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this. People know the ones that they read that are really, really good. These are some of the ones that I like, that I've engaged with or enjoy. Always looking for new things. I wouldn't say I read any of these with like perfect consistency. Just like time dependent. What I read, I would say like The Hustle might be the one that I read the most frequently. I tend to really enjoy it, but there's a lot, and people tend to enjoy all of these. Newsletters are tough to grow. There is no discovery. This is the same thing with podcasts. It's the same thing with anything that doesn't have kind of an algorithm based profile. So you have to use Twitter effectively to drive it. You're basically trying to figure out a way to like directly funnel from one larger audience that has discovery to the one that doesn't. You're going to kind of like manufacture and create discovery. I talked about how I do it in my threads, leading people through and creating that funnel. If you can figure out and create a funnel like that, it's really, really effective, and it's a great way to grow your newsletter audience. I've grown mine to, I think I'm like just north of 90,000 now, and it's basically been over the course of the last year. I started sending out novel content May of 2021, so basically just developed an effective funnel and have consistently done that every weekend over the last year. So the consistency was key, but find the funnel and find your way that you're going to drive eyes to the unique and owned content. Why do people subscribe? Again, this is like landing page type stuff. And it's another reason why I think, being on platform, like, I think Substack is fine for starting out. I think it's a good like no code tool, very simple, easy to use. I've used it historically. I will be switching. I'm switching to ConvertKit personally. I like the kind of ability to customize more, to have unique landing pages, to do more things on a custom scale as I continue to grow, to have different sequences, A/B test things, etc. So having a landing page that is clear, that tells them what they're going to learn, why they should subscribe, similar principles to what we talked about with the bio, is really, really key. Someone asked, can you swap newsletter out with podcast? Yes. I mean, honestly, these exact same growth challenges that I faced with the newsletter have been growth challenges that I've had to encounter and face with the podcast. Figuring out a way to funnel people through, it's like another another pain in the neck, and you need to figure out a way to drive discovery to it. Deliverability. There are a bunch of things around this. I constantly have headaches around it. It's part of the reason I want to switch to ConvertKit as well, is that they have more data. It's a more data rich environment around deliverability, and you can do more testing and sequences. Substack's data, I'm a data nerd, and it's pretty crummy. You just don't see that much about it. And frankly, for sponsors, it's kind of crummy because you can't give them all the data that they want on the value they're getting. The handful of things that are really important, you need to drive, you want to see high quality open rates over time. I would say when you're starting out, 50% is a great kind of benchmark. If you can be above that, 50% is a good benchmark to try to stay above. When you're first starting out, when it's very early, that's like, kind of a good baseline. As it gets much larger, you're naturally going to see it trend down typically, because it just gets bigger. It's more reach to it. You kind of get away from your like real core audience that loves everything you do. So like 40%, I would say, is a good high water mark. As you get much bigger, 35, 40% in that range. There are certainly newsletters that break that are much bigger, but kind of a good thing to think about. Inactive readers, this is kind of a point of contention. Some people swear by scrubbing your newsletter list and removing people that are completely inactive, and that it drives email deliverability. I've heard both sides of it. I think if you have a large inactive base, it's more likely to hit spam filters for people because it gets flagged. But just something to think about. Like if you're, for me, if I went and cut people that had been inactive for 6 months, I would need to go look at the numbers. My guess is there's probably 10,000 people on my 90,000 list that haven't opened an email in 6 months. So I could go scrub them off and drive my open rate way up. Something to think about. I've never had anyone give me a compelling reason to do it, relative to like sponsor rates and what I can garner in the market, but something to think about as you go. The other thing with open rates is that subject lines have a big impact on them. you want something that people want to open and click on. The flip side is if you include too many, there's some like websites that give you good guides on words that get flagged in spam filters, etc. But like sometimes using too big of like dollar figures gets flagged as spam, at a higher rate, even though people are more likely to click on it. It might have gotten delivered to more spam filters. And so it's kind of these puts and takes around all of it. Blake, over to you. Sorry, I talked for a while there. And we can get into all that detail on the workshop day tomorrow. You are on mute, Blake.
Sure as the heck is. Okay, good stuff. No, I just said no worries on talking for a while. That's good stuff. So I think that's it for today. I'll do the same thing I've done the last couple of days. One, there's a cheat sheet that covers everything we went over today, just in a more succinct manner. That should be in the syllabus where everybody can grab it. And then if we want to do the same thing we did yesterday, Rob, just give everybody like a 5-minute break just to use the restroom, get a drink. Then I'm happy to hang out for another 20-30 minutes and just do some live Q&A.
All right.
Okay.
So short
Thanks,
break,
Sahil.
and we'll be back with question and answer. And I have pulled a ton of questions from the chat as well.
Yeah, there seemed to be a large amount building up there, I saw. So we'll bang through as many as we can.
I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull up on Miami with the heat. I don't know about you, but I know about me. Summertime in Florida, catch me sliding on the key, yeah. Oh, something's happening inside of me. Excellence, yeah, it's gotta be hot and cold, it's dichotomy. Rock with me, we some prodigies. Lottie-dottie, we party. They hear us down in the lobby. We try to tell them to join us, and if they don't, they'll be sorry. No time to be addy hating. It's history in the making. I'm loving all the options, quite everything that they're saying. My mama proud as she ought to be. Elton John keep on calling me, but even if he didn't, she still think we hit the lottery. Don't need diamonds to be cold. I'm so shiny, I'm like gold. You just gotta let it show. Run it back and let's reload. I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull up on Miami with the heat. I don't know about you, but I know about me. Summertime in Florida, catch me sliding on the keys. Yeah, I'm sliding. My looks could kill they violent. Look at me, I'm the captain and pilot. I'm on an island project. Don't ask me what the vibe is. I can't define it, can't even put that stuff down and write it. Yeah, sun shining, 24/7, clouds floating. Wait, is this heaven? Didn't even die to get here, yeah. Looking for the top is so clear, yeah. Everything I need is right here, yeah. Everything I don't need diamonds to be cold. I'm so shiny, I'm like gold. You just gotta let it show. Running back and let's reload. Yeah, let's reload. I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull up on Miami with the heat. I don't know about you, but I know about me. Summertime in Florida, catch me sliding on the keys. I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull up on Miami with the heat. I don't know about you, but I know about me. Summertime in Florida, catch me sliding on the keys. I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull
All right, Rob. I'm ready when you are.
All right.
I think I probably got, I don't know, 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. However, we'll see how it goes.
Okay. I got like a page of questions here in a Google Doc. I can share it on the screen if we want to take a look at that. We've also got some people hand raising some requests to look at bios. How do you want to do this, Blake? Where do we want to start?
Let's do the hand raisers live first, and then if we run out of hand raisers, then we'll go to the doc. If not, we can use the doc for tomorrow. That because we'll have a good couple hours tomorrow. So
Excellent. Esprit. Is it Esprit or Esprit?
I'm not particular. It's a spree, but you could say it however you want. I had a I had a gangster friend growing up who would call me aspirin. That was fine too. Like I'd love a Twitter audit bio if that's okay.
Let's see. Let's do it.
I just put it in the chat to make it easy at Esprit Devora.
I'm getting it. Just 1 second here.
I'm
You're
really
just-
excited.
you're just
nerd,
gonna
but feel
share
free to
these?
crush me. Yeah.
Okay, you're just gonna share them up on the screen, Rob? Okay, cool. Okay, I like the first line. This is just for, on a human level, for you all to know. This is fun for me. This is pretty cool.
Okay,
just to,
cool.
just to look at this stuff. So I like the first line. Host of top 10 podcasts, Los Angeles startups.
The one thing I'll share quickly that I struggle with is whether to share like social proof and credibility versus what I write about. And I never have enough characters, so I don't know what to do.
Yeah, man, the bio is pretty succinct. It doesn't give you a whole lot of room. So I would probably, my advice just looking at this is I would cut a couple pieces of social proof and add in a little bit of what you write about. I would have a mix. I like the opening line of the girl who gets it done is good. So maybe girl who gets it done, host of top 10 podcasts, Los Angeles startup is fine. And then I think I'd probably make the second line more about what you write about. And then down in the bottom, I think like, unless you just want it to say you're in LA, I think there's a couple tricks like where it says podcast in LA. I think you can put some of your other links there. I'd have to tweak with it.
So because I have a really prominent community in Los Angeles, that's why I have
Gotcha.
LA.
Gotcha.
What would you cut out? Because the other social proof that people have seemed to be really attracted to is that I've produced over 1,000 podcast episodes. So it's between that or host of top 10. I've also been featured in Harper's Bazaar. So I rotate those three things. I don't know. Like, what do you suggest? I struggle with this a lot. What do you think I should cut out? Like, I don't know what to do.
Here's your problem. You have an embarrassment of riches. You got too many things that you've been featured in. So I actually like what you just said. I think I'd rotate them. I think that's a good idea.
Oh,
I actually think that's pretty interesting idea.
really?
Yeah.
I never thought to actively do that. You think I
Yeah.
should like switch out that every few months?
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Because people, people that already follow you will see new things that you're doing, working on, engaged with, whatnot. And you might find you get some by rotating it. I'm spitballing here. I'm thinking by rotating it, you might actually get some engagement from people specific to something you've rotated in. And that can be that could be a signal to you that, probably need to keep this one in the bio. People seem to like it.
Okay. Oh my gosh, what a great, I have never thought to do that. And then the other thing I struggle with is I've taken out that I've been the icon of Clubhouse, and then people are like, whoa, you've been the icon of Clubhouse. So I like, then I put it back in. I don't know what to do. Do you say take it out or leave it in?
I would get rid of Clubhouse, just me personally. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure. What is I don't even know. What is Clubhouse doing these days? Are they still alive? Are they dead? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So that's your thoughts on that. And then the last most important thing is if I was new to Twitter, I understand how important it is to say, like, essentially I write content about how to have a successful podcast. Like, and typically it's geared on how to get 10,000 podcast listeners a month. But I don't say that at all. I've taken that out, I've put it in, but it feels like that's where I don't know what to do, Blake. Like I don't know what to do because that's so many words and like it takes up so much. I don't know what to do.
Change your banner image. That's what you need. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would use your banner image as a place to include some of these additional things that you're talking about. Because right now, like I get the saying, people love sayings. Man, I've had a couple of tweets go viral that were nothing but quotes and sayings. So I resonate with that. That being said, like you already say, the girl gets it done in the bio, and you say it above. I would use the banner image as more of a place that you could say some of the things around podcasts that you just mentioned.
You inspired me. Maybe I'll even like test out the banner and maybe I'll even write like a little like I'm all about being human, so maybe I'll write like a little letter in my banner, like an image letter, like hi everyone, and then this, I don't know, something fun. I've never seen something like that before.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
Quick tip on banner versus text. Your text is searchable, but your banner isn't. So if there's keywords that you want to be found for on Twitter, like podcasts, make sure that stays in the text content. But if it's your email address there or something like that,
what a great idea! I could put the email in the banner. You're saying?
Yeah, like the email or even the having those links is, with the other handles is also helpful. But yeah, like things like that no one is going to search for the keywords.
Oh my God, thank you so much. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Sure. I think Esprit has more energy today than I've had in my entire life. But I'm pretty even keel. So
okay, Wei has sent me something that I'm going to pull up in just a second here. I got to download a screenshot. Give me a second.
Yeah, I have a question before anyway. So, hey again. So my question is, I just had this today. I thought about it. I want to write about self-actualization and philosophy, but I realized that, so I'm a high stakes poker player and I have a lot of credibility and authority in that community. So I was thinking, maybe it's a better idea, since I'm completely new to Twitter, to just start writing about poker first and then over time transitioning into another area. Do you think that would be a good approach that makes sense, to write in an area of your expertise and credibility first and then transitioning to what you actually want to write about in the long run?
Yes. Easy answer. Yes. Plus, man, that's I'm a gambler. So for me, I find that interesting. But I think high stakes poker isn't on ESPN, it isn't on a bunch of different channels. Like, it's not on national television because there's no interest there, right? And you've got a combination there of gambling, which a lot of people find interesting, money, which everybody finds interesting, and something that there's probably a fair market that doesn't know how to do what you do, and would find what's the life of a professional poker player. Like, I would find that interesting to know, like, what's your daily life? Are you traveling all over the world? Are you going to, like, Macau and Vegas? And, so yes, short answer, I may be biased just because I personally find that topic interesting, but that's probably what I would do. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. And then with regards to yesterday, you gave me great feedback and that was really helpful. So I tried to just implement it already today, and just wanted to know if there's still something that you would criticize here straight off the bat, and also have one specific question afterwards.
Okay, just for the sake of time, what's the specific question?
The
And
specific
then
question
if you
is,
want to share, if you want to share this in the community or something, I'll try and take a look at it as a whole
okay,
later.
yeah, okay, cool, awesome. So the question that I had was really like asking for some advice in implementing the mini hooks that you guys talked about yesterday afterwards. Because so not the big hook in the beginning, but the hook between the individual tweets, I didn't really implement it here, and I was wondering how I would do that.
Okay. Trying to think, like, the best way I can frame it is, and what you want is some kind of cliffhanger, right? Like you're watching a series on Netflix and episode 3 ends, and it ends hanging on something that makes you want to binge watch and watch episode 4, like right then, rather than waiting till tomorrow or the next day or whatever. That's what I mean by that's what it, and it's not always possible. Like it depends on what the content is and what the subject matter is, but that's kind of the general advice, is at the end of each tweet, try and have it hang on something that leads to whatever the topic is of the next one. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. In an obvious way so that people know, or is it fine if it's like a little subtle as well?
I would lean towards obvious. I would lean towards
Okay, got it.
obvious.
Right. Thanks.
Sure.
All right, we got Craig.
Hey guys, thanks so much for this. Sorry for the background noise. I had to land in a public place, but a real quick question. I have a blog. I'm a management consultant, and has a decent subscriber count for being about a year old. Kind of curious on the subscriber side. My idea was always grow the subscriber count so that courses, workshops, things like this are things that can be on offer. But I'm kind of curious, is it better to focus on sponsorships or paid additional content or something like that first? Is there a faster sort of growth strategy in that respect that's worth investing more time in, or does it matter? That's really the question.
Okay, sorry, it cut out on my end a little bit at the very beginning. Were you asking specifically to newsletters?
Yeah, correct. So subscriber growth there from a monetization perspective.
Okay,
better to focus on something I control or on sponsorship, things like that.
Gotcha. I guess I'll answer your question with the question. How are you driving people to your newsletter now? Like, how are you getting subscribers now?
So it's mostly local based. So, I'm in a kind of a small regional community. And so I just, have a good network here locally. So clients, friends on social media and those kinds of things. But I would say that geographically, the reach is not very far outside of the local area, except for friends and family that don't live here.
Okay. Is your primary goal like monetization of the newsletter itself, or to use the newsletter as a mechanism to drive people to something else, like a course per se?
Or up until just listening to today, it was primarily to drive people to something else. But that's kind of the question: is should I maybe look at something else as an interim step or as a better step?
If you're comfortable sharing, how many subscribers do you have now?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, small, 50 people. Readership is higher than that though. But it's not necessarily converting to subscribers.
Okay,
so social weekly posts, social media, promotion of that gets the eyes.
I will tell you what's worked for me. So I started mine, I don't even know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, something like that. I'd have to look at. I've used Twitter threads as the primary way to drive people to the landing page for the newsletter to convert to subscribers. And as what Sahil said earlier, man, mine's super simple. It's just a curation of like the best of Twitter, basically. And I've tried to hit it from 2 sides, right? Big accounts that I just find their content valuable and interesting, and smaller accounts that maybe I think aren't getting the light shined on them that they deserve, right? And my thought was always, if I could get big enough scale with it, then big accounts would want to be featured in it because it's got a lot of eyes, and small accounts, it'd be a cool thing I could do for other people is to feature them in there, and that inherently would have value. So say all that to say, to get to the answer to your question. So just by using Twitter threads, that's the only place that I have tried to drive subscribers. I'm at around 11,000 in 4 months. 10,000 is kind of the benchmark. At least currently, I'm aware of some of the things Sahil was talking about some ad networks that are being built behind the scene. I'm not sure yet what the threshold is going to be there from a subscriber base. But in the past, kind of 10,000 has been the line where you can start to get sponsorships from brands where they want to be featured at the top of your newsletter. So to step back, I would focus on what's my top of funnel that I'm getting people in, that I can drive people to that newsletter, then grow the subscriber base of the newsletter. Then, the sponsorships are just, that's kind of side money. That's kind of mailbox money if you can get that. And then you can, so kind of the last piece of that for me anyway, would be then to use that newsletter to drive people to some other piece of, some other monetization concept that you're thinking about.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks everyone who's jumping. Abby, you're up.
Thanks, Rob. And while it's fresh top of mind, Craig, I help run like a newsletter for somebody else who's got a very dedicated audience of about 20K, netting I think about 5 figures per month out of that. And the big thing for him that's really worked out, he has a engaged, like super engaged, double opt-in audience that loves him. And that's, I guess, like brands are willing to pay for, like, this guy's going to get clicks and it's perfect niche audience, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be something to consider.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, just a real quick side note, just kind of funny, in our community, Twitter is just absolutely not a thing. I mean, Facebook is pretty much the only network that anybody's using here. So it's just, anyway, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, for what it's worth, I have a Facebook account. I haven't logged in years. But say that to say, I would venture to guess some similar principles that we've discussed in this course. You could follow a similar path there to try and drive some eyes to your newsletter. So,
Blake, so my question for you is, could, like, any chance I might be able to get a bio audit? Because I have absolutely no credibility. I'm supposed to still be in college. And
what do you mean supposed to?
I graduated early, so all my friends are still like wrapping it up, and I'm over here like, oh, let me go solopreneur this.
Cool. Yeah. Throw it up there. Throw a link. We'll look at it. Happy to do it.
Sweet. Thank you.
First comment, damn, you look different in your bio picture. You look super serious. What's the banner image?
That's me and my boys at a bonfire.
Okay, what are you trying to do with your account? So you're tweeting about non-plant touching aspects of the can. I have no idea what non-plant touching means. I guess it just means thing. I guess as I think, here's the thing, you want people to read it and not have to think, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they immediately know what it is. So when I look at this, like, I can think about it for a couple of seconds and, okay, so you're talking about everything unrelated to the plant itself, I'm guessing. Yep. Is what that means. So I could be wrong. I'm not an expert here. I'm not sure anybody cares. So I would say tweeting about, the cannabis industry in general. Like, I don't know if when I say I'm not sure they care, I'm not sure about the non-plant touching part. Helping pass more, like, okay, so again, I'm not in this industry. I don't know what the MORE Act is. Maybe something super cool. Just I don't know what it is. So I might rephrase that to say, like, helping to pass, groundbreaking legislation related to cannabis, or something of that nature. That's more of a I know exactly what it means when I read it. I mean, that's kind of the main point when it comes to bios is, and honestly, I'm not sure mine is a great is a great example to go look at. But really, you just want people to see, okay, who is this person? What do they do? What are they writing about? And why are they worth listening to in this space? And I'm actually personally, I'm a fan of, like, you've got terrible speller at the end, and I did notice it's spelled wrong. Like, I kind of like that kind of crap. It makes you human. So I'm kind of a fan of that stuff. Really, my only critiques would be, depending on, like, I personally think, like, your picture, your bio picture could kind of should kind of fit the vibe of what you're trying to convey. So, and I haven't read, a lot of your stuff, so I don't know if your vibe is more businessy and serious, and in that case, then the picture's fine. But if you're writing in more of a laid back, chill kind of way, then don't have a picture of you wearing a suit. Like, just think of what makes sense, right?
Okay.
And then just these two images, to me, when I look at them, like, off base, or just off my head. So I got a dude in a suit and then a random campfire.
Okay.
That like, that's what I see when I look at this. So I'm like, okay, no one else in the Twitter world knows this is you and your boys at a campfire. And frankly, why would they care about you and your boys at a campfire? I mean, yeah, might be a cool picture. I might have liked hanging out there with you. I'm not sure that furthers what you're writing and what you're trying to do. So,
Got it. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just, man, think of it like a billboard, right? When you drive by a billboard going down the road, and in 5 seconds that your eyes catch that and drive by, that brand has got their message across. You know what you're going to get. So same thing here.
All right. So make it basically no thinking.
Yep.
Got
That's
it.
the easy way.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
All right, Brian, what you got?
We have the most active member of the community, Brian.
You haven't even seen my conversation on DMs with him either.
Okay. What's happening, man?
Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it. Your help's been incredible. So I want to go back to what you said earlier around retweeting. I'm having trouble figuring out how to make content retweetable. And what I mean by that is, when I heard you speak, I heard, hey, make great content and it'll retweet. Sometimes I'll make content and get a ton of likes, but no retweets. And sometimes I get a ton of retweets. And so wondering, is there a type of content that is say smart, great content that leans towards more retweets than likes?
I can just speak to me personally. So for me, what works is content that helps make people better in some form or fashion. Whether that is just general, like improving their lives in some way, or obviously, man, the tactical threads for me on software tutorials. I mean, I think the last one I did on Excel had 25,000 retweets. So it's ridiculous. But the number behind, or the reason behind that, is because I'm teaching people how to do something they didn't know how to do. And so when they learn how to do it, they want to share it and say, hey man, I learned how to do something here. Be cool if I shared it so other people would learn. And to be honest, some of that just comes with scale. As you grow, like, I didn't get near as many retweets on things when I first started out. Honestly, like 10,000 was kind of 10,000 was kind of the mark. There's inflection points, right, in follower numbers. So 10,000, I started to see more retweets, more follower conversion, just more engagement in general. Then that stayed fairly static until probably the 50 to 60K range. And then at 50 to 60K, it was like another level of, social proof had been unlocked that when people saw stuff I put out, they were much more likely to share, much more likely to engage. And then, once you get to like 100K, once you get there or over, then the response shifts more to when people hit your profile, they're more like, oh crap, this person has this many followers. Why haven't I been following? What have I been missing? Of course I'm going to follow. So it's like anything, it gets easier the longer you go. That's why we preach the consistency thing. But to go back to your original question, retweeting to me is the primary things I see get retweeted are either controversial, and I mean controversial in the way that people either agree or disagree with it, not necessarily like take a stand, I guess is what I would say, is have an opinion, take a stand. Like if you're not writing something, like for me, there's no way to like take a stand on Gmail or Excel or, it is what it is. But if you're writing something that's topical, then you can take one side of that story and that will usually drive retweets, either because people agree and they're like, hey, this dude said what I've been thinking and what I wish I would have said, or I didn't have the guts to say, or whatever, or they'll retweet it and comment underneath it and say, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. No one should listen to him. And I'm a little bit in the boat of it doesn't bother me when people dunk on me or say I've got something wrong. Like I don't really care. So I'm a little more in the boat of engagement is engagement. So, and I find it, if you disagree and you got a good reason why and a valid argument to make, man, I'm all for it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Like, I was wondering if you could take a look at this tweet of Brian's recently. 13 likes, 1 retweet. He's got a few others that he wrote recently that have more like 30% like to retweet ratio. This one, he has a controversial statement in there to some extent, but it's a little bit buried.
Okay, couple things right off my head, and I've got it's too long. It needs to. I know we keep preaching that. It's just too long. So I would have said, there's 600 million or whatever, people on Twitter. I would have made that like a single short set. Like I'm not a fan personally. If I can avoid it, I can't always avoid this. I'm not a fan of the first line running over into the second line, like the text wrapping into the second line. I like my first line. If I can make it happen, I like it to be a single line. So I would have just said like, 600 million people on Twitter or, something like that. And then this one's a little tricky. I'd have to think about it for a while, mostly because I don't like questions and hooks. I have done it. I've never had it work, not once. So I just quit doing it. I have no statistical data to back that up. I've got nothing super smart to say about why that doesn't work, other than I've never had it work for me when I put a question in the hook. And I know a few other people with relatively large accounts, like 50K and up, that same thing. Anytime they put a question in the hook, it doesn't go anywhere. And I think my gut says that is driven by kind of what I touched on earlier, is people want you to make a statement. You're not out there like, I'm not reading Twitter to answer questions for other people. I'm reading it to hear their insights and what their take is on on various topics. So I guess that's what I would say on this one is shorten it up, get rid of the questions, make it into more of a statement. And then I actually like the line of choose who to spend less time with. That's a good line. I probably would have just left that as the only third line. And then like we touched on in today's lesson, I used it for quite a while. So if you go back through my stuff, you'll see plenty of thread emojis. My personal opinion is they've gotten kind of played out. That ties into, you just have to kind of watch what's working and what's not. And stuff will work for a little while. And then when people just, natural human tendency, when people see something that works, they'll jump on it. And then it becomes cliche pretty quick. So then you got to move on to the next.
Do you think the colon right now is sort of the trending way to casually say this is a thread?
Yeah. And the thing that I would say to that is, Sahil mentioned, we text back and forth quite a bit about hook ideas, right? And the first time he did it with just a colon, like Sahil was concerned if people would know it was a thread or not. And I said, come on, dude, everybody knows it's a thread. You wrote it. It's Saturday morning. It's a thread. So I said, quit worrying about it. But point is, once you start writing content, people will learn it's a thread. So the short answer is yes. That's what I'm personally doing right now is 1 sentence, 2 sentences, and a colon. And that's it. And the only caution I would have there is like the smaller you are, I don't necessarily think it's bad to try and find some way to call attention to the fact that it's a thread. I don't want to tell people just do a colon, because I do honestly think some of the reason that works for me or some of the reason that works for Sahil is because of the size of following we have and the reputation for writing threads we've built. So I have some hesitation on how well that would work if you're just starting out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and one follow-up question on that. So it sounds like the type of tweet or thread that tends to be more retweetable is more tactical among controversial and others. Ignoring the hook for a sec on that thread Rob had up, is the content tactical enough to be retweetable, or would you change part of that? And we don't need to go into detail, but just at a high level.
Any way you can recall that, Rob?
You want the tweet back?
Yeah, just the tweet so I could see the body of it that he was talking about. Or Brian, can you share it again if that's easier?
I'll get it. I do want to challenge the assertion that utility-based tweets are the most retweetable. Yeah. Being controversial, taking a contrarian opinion, listening in, like big emotion tweets. There are huge ways to do it. Blake is just a really big. He's a master of the utility tweet. So like
Sahil never does you tactical threads. Like, I mean, I shouldn't say he never does tactical threads. He never does like tutorial style, like software based stuff like I do. And last I checked, he's done okay with getting retweets. So no argument there. The body of it, can you scroll a little bit, Rob? Cool. That's good. Structurally looks fine. How it's broken up, like I like to do the same thing. I like space between lines. I like a breakup of like outline style with bullet points and not having bullet points. This is all just like some general copywriting stuff. Like where I would say like between like 5 and go back up just a little bit, Rob. Yeah. So one thing I see just offhand here, if you're going to use and this is, man, you got to take this with a grain of salt because all of this is just personal preference of mine. But if you're going to use bullets, use bullets. Don't use bullets and then later on in a different tweet, break it out outline style and use numbers. Like I'm a fan of use one or the other. Just make it consistent, because here's what I'm trying to do in the body of a thread. I'm trying to make it as easily readable as possible. And I want each one to flow into the next. Like, I don't want to give people a reason to stop reading before they get to the call to action at the end. So however that works, that's the goal I'm trying to achieve. Is I want it, chunky, choppy writing where, it just flows as people are going through it. Some kind of cliffhanger on the end. Like, the biggest thing I see people do is either it's just big blocks of text, which you don't have here. This looks fine. But I see big blocks of text, no punctuation or bad punctuation. And then each tweet doesn't really lead into the next one to keep people rolling. I think that's good on that one, Rob. Let's jump to the next, just so we get as many people as we can.
I wanted to just call out that aha moment for me. Like, I could have easily written a thread like this, and even just seeing the visual difference between line, bullet list, line, and then line, like 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines. Like, this thread, it doesn't have that nice symmetricality that some threads do. And even though it's really nicely formatted, I agree that it could be even more symmetrical every single tweet, and maybe that would be more pleasing to the eye.
Yeah, man, I'm just a fan of, that's the way my brain works. So I like to pick a style and then follow that style throughout, and I think that helps drive people from tweet to tweet by like they know what to expect in the next one. Okay, I got this, and this in this tweet. So the next one, I'm going to get this, and this. So then if somewhere in the middle you completely change, then I think it just causes an interrupt that you don't want. So.
All right, Arvin, thank you for waiting. What do we got?
Thank you so much. I actually have 2 questions. The first one is about Twitter bots, right? I've seen these people on Twitter who say, follow me and leave a comment or something, and I will auto DM this resource or this thing that I've made. I have no clue how to go about doing that. Or is that something that's actually worth investing in? And the second was, could you please review a hook that I've written? It's 3 sentences long.
On the first one, go ahead and share the tweet with Rob in the chat so he can pull that up just so it's ready. On the first one, man, I don't know that there's a lot you can do about bots. I think hopefully I know that's one of the things that Elon has openly talked about trying to address. So I think
he's talking about the positive end of bots, where you create a bot to help you like auto share content if people send you a certain message or something.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that. I actually think those. I know a couple people that do that. I actually think it's pretty good. I know a couple people that have used that to really stoke the fire on growing their newsletter specifically. Where they put out either a thread or a single tweet, and they have a trigger built behind the scenes that says, if I get X amount of comments or X amount of retweets, whatever their engagement metric is they choose, that it automatically adds a second tweet below that and makes a little mini thread out of it with a link to their newsletter. So short answer, I don't see any harm in that. I think that's something I've actually been thinking about doing myself, just haven't done it yet.
It won't lead into like a shadow ban or something like that, right?
No, not to my knowledge.
Cool. Yeah, and the first 3 sentences on this one.
Tickle a kitten or kill a kraken. That's the difference between tactic and branded. Okay, just this may have meaning like in the world, like in the audience that you're trying to address. I have no idea what the first sentence means. So just for me.
Oh, that's just a curiosity hook. That's it.
Okay, so I'm just saying for for me, and maybe the community thinks different. For me, I wouldn't know what that meant, and then so then I would roll into the next line of, that's the difference between tech debt and brand debt. Like, I just find it a little confusing. Like, I'm not sure how like tech debt and brand debt and the first line like relate to each other. So I think if it was me, if the body of this is about like, let's see, you build up tech debt when you take shortcuts. So define just what are you talking about on tech debt? Just to define that for me. Just
right. So when you're building software, sometimes you take shortcuts.
Okay.
You write bad code, and therefore
Gotcha.
you'll have to go back and fix it later. However, the same process does not work with building a brand, because there, once you put out something, you can't go back and change it, and that thing just becomes worse and
Gotcha.
worse, compounding, and that's a big problem.
Okay, so just real high level, I would try and break down your hook into more of a widely relatable topic, which you just hit on, which is people taking shortcuts, like trying to save time now that only costs you later. That's probably how I would have framed this one. In some way, is just to say, hey, lots of times, people think they're saving time on the front end, only to find out they've cost themselves, they've taken shortcuts and cost themselves a bunch of time on the back end. Something, obviously that's not a good hook, what I just said, but something of that nature. The point is, I would try and frame it in more of a
Relatable.
Yeah, kind of the same thing as what I said a couple questions ago to the bio, is you don't want people like confused or questioning when they read a hook. You want them to see your hook, know exactly what you're talking about, why they care, and why they should click. Like, it should be easy.
Cool.
Your second
Right.
tweet is actually, if you really tightened it up to be more concise, I think your second tweet has a good hook to it. It's much more clear.
That's a good point, Rob. Here's just a personal hack that I use. I do it the opposite of Sahil. I write the hooks first. I don't know why. That's just the way I do it. I don't have a reason, but so I will write the hook first, and then I try and write the rest of a thread with the hook I wrote in mind. What I find often happens is exactly what Rob just described. I will go back after I've gotten it all written, and usually whatever I wrote in the second tweet that was like my lead in to the meat of the story, I like better than the hook I originally wrote. And I usually end up taking some portion of what was my second tweet, turning that into my hook, and getting rid of the lead in tweet. Is just kind of some behind the scenes of how
Right.
I do it.
Blake, would I be accurate in saying that I should simplify this as much as possible? Like, do I write for the lowest common denominator? Is that what you recommend?
Yeah, there's a fine line there, right? Yes, it needs to be simple enough that anyone can understand. It's kind of like what I talked about with some of the software stuff I do. I try and it's not always easy. I try and find a good balance of complicated enough that not everyone knows it, simple enough anyone can understand it.
Cool. All right, I'll practice that. Thank you.
Yep, sure. And Rob, I think we'll do whoever has their hand raised now, and then chop it for tomorrow.
All right.
So
Let's see.
whoever's already in line, we'll go ahead and do, and then tomorrow we'll gather a whole bunch of questions and just do as many as we can.
All right. We have Niv here.
Hey guys, and apologies for the excessive yawning. It's 3:30 in where I am.
Oh man, appreciate the commitment.
No, it's been great, man. I missed the last two because I was traveling, so I wasn't gonna miss this one. Yeah, but if I could get like a Twitter, like a bio audit, I feel mine's, especially after following Esprit, which seems like a catastrophic tactical error at this point, is mine feels really, really bland and boring. And maybe some comments on maybe a banner heading that could, fit the thematic of what I'm going for.
Okay, what are you writing about?
So pretty much, I'm essentially a consultant, maybe mainly to founders and entrepreneurs who are looking to scale to get either private equity or larger VC funding, and founders looking to exit. So finance, revenue growth, profit growth, getting investors in the door, exiting businesses, that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. I actually don't think the three points you have there are bad. I think those are fine. The only thing I would add, I think what I would just try and spice it up with some personality a little bit. For the bio picture, and man, lots of people do this. I've seen lots of like successful people do this, and as a matter of fact, pretty sure mine looks like this, so I'm gonna criticize myself. But I think mine's just a white background. I'd have to go look. But these bio pictures that I see a lot of people do that just have like some like a black t-shirt and a pastel background, I always like, they look like Photoshop to me. Like they look like a fake person. I don't, and like I said, I see a lot of accounts, man, that do just fine with this. So that's just my personal 2 cents. And kind of what I said to a couple of the other people. I personally like using the banner image as some way to either tell people more about you and what you're doing and what you're writing about. Like mine's super simple. I think it says, I'm not looking at it at the moment, but I think it says like learning, like,
writing, and sharing.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Yeah.
So very, very simple is all I'm trying to convey there is I'm learning. I'm always trying to learn new things. Then I'm going to write about them. Then I'm going to share with you. That's it. And then I just had a guy make a graphic for me that, trying to illustrate that, as I consume things, I'm filling up these knowledge tanks, and then they're dumping out into the follow button. So if you want to consume this stuff, go click the follow. So I'm a fan personally of, some kind of flow to your banner image that tells people what you're doing, why they should care, and then leads them somewhere. But as far as the points below, I actually don't think they're too bad. I think the only thing I might add there is if there's any noteworthy names or brands, just to add a little bit more social proof. And I totally get it. Sometimes you can't share those things. So,
NDAs on NDAs.
Okay. Yeah. So I totally get it. If that's why you're not sharing it, then yeah, totally get it, man. But all in all, that's kind of the simple version. I'd add a little bit more personality, change up the banner image. Those are kind of the two main things.
Awesome. All right, I'll get to that. Thanks so much, guys.
Sure.
Really helpful. Worth staying up to 3:30, that's for sure.
Sure. Glad to hear it.
All right. It's Natalie. You've made it to the front. You have something? All right. We'll hold your spot.
Yeah, I pull it up right now.
Hey, Natalie, just for what it's worth, I'm super laid back. So if people are walking in and out, I don't care.
Let me enable you to pull it up. All right. Now you can screen share yourself.
Okay, thank you. I just made my first tweet and it was not really a success, but I would just love feedback on my profile, particularly like incorporating the brand. I'm a founder and I think, connected to my brand. So any feedback that you have. Also a question about I just realized that I should maybe do a professional profile. So I just switched over, but I'll pause.
Cool. I like the banner image. I really do. That's a good image. Looks like it's well made. So down below you've got, I tweet about founder life, women's health, and inspiring ideas. The only critique I would have on the banner, like I genuinely like the banner image. I think that's a nice, just looking image, and it flows through a few different things. Is if you're going to write about, like, obviously the image above, you see women's health, right? That's super easy to see. I don't see, and of course, expectant mothers, a child, that's inspiring in and of itself. So I think you got your second 2 points covered.
Okay.
If you could add something, like tweak that banner image a little bit to kind of show maybe the business side a little bit, I actually think it's pretty good. I really do. And then you've got, CEO and founder of Expectful. That's cool. So that's like your current project that you're working on now. And then you've got some social proof there of, hey, here's some pretty big names in the game that I've worked for. So actually, I think it's pretty good. I like yours. I would just, if I just look at the banner image, my mind goes to immediately, okay, this person is writing about, women's health specific to pregnancy. That's where my mind goes immediately. So if that's what you want it to say, then don't change a thing, because that's to me what it says immediately. If you want it to say, hey, I'm a founder and this is my next project, like I might add something more, like I might make the vision on my left, I might make it more like, how do I say it, more of like, here's my background, like an image that conveys, hey, I'm a founder, this is what I'm building, which is like the image you have now, and this is what I can do for you, kind of thing.
Okay, that's really helpful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
Very cool. Thank you, Natalie. And I think we have another Natalie, technically.
Yes.
Hey guys. Sorry for putting my camera off for a while, but I was putting out fires at work and I didn't want you to see my.
all good.
Thank you. So I think I kind of answered myself now that I reread my question, but I'll still put it out there. I have an idea of writing a thread with the key takeaways from David Spink's book, The Business of Belonging, on communities. I don't know if you've heard about it. And I also made a big summary PDF, which I'd love to, give out as a resource. I previously asked David if he was okay with me sharing it, and he's fine with it. He was like, why are you asking me? But do you think I should do this because I'm betting that it will convert or whatever? I assume it will be a good performing tweet or whatever. I don't know if to do this once I'm already set up with my Twitter profile strategy, or have a bank of content that I can publish, because I'm afraid if I tweet it and then have nothing in my profile, if I have potential followers and they'll go to my profile and see it sucks, I'll lose the opportunity. I don't know what.
Well, hey Rob, how hard is it to pull up her profile?
I can get it. This is a chicken and egg problem, though.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Is that, man? Just very high level. Get out of your own way. Quit worrying so much.
Okay.
That's what I see. Is just get out of your own way. Try some things. Yeah. So she says terrible. Sorry, I'm just laughing at mystery box. Yeah, get rid of mystery box, because like I said yesterday, you just gotta
growing on me.
You just gotta be why would I follow, like I said, like we talked about today, I might follow you just to find out what the hell a mystery box is. But really, I would just say, don't overthink it. Put a couple sentences in there that say who you are, what you're going to write about, and why people should care, and go from there. And you can always change it, right? That's what I always tell people too, is, man, if you put something out and a week or two later you don't like it, and then change it. It's not the end of the world, right? So as for the thread that you were mentioning, kind of the same answer. Try it, put it out there. I mean, and see what happens. You got nothing to lose, right? I mean, one thing I always tell people is, and this sounds harsh, and I don't mean it that way, but you care a lot more about what you're doing than everyone else does.
Definitely.
That's just the truth. So, people get so worked up in their mind, and they don't take the first step, and they don't put it out there because they're so worried about what the feedback is going to be.
Yeah.
Man, just quit worrying about that.
Just
on
stop that cycle.
yeah, on a couple of levels, right? If you throw it out there and it does well, then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to kick yourself and say, why the hell didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what I'm doing. I mean, I started writing on Twitter when I was 39. I'm 40 now. So took me a long time, a lot of thinking about writing on Twitter, a lot of thinking, so I didn't. So now, a year into it, I tell myself all the time, why did you wait so long? You moron, you could be 5 steps ahead of where you are now. So that's one, is quit worrying about it, write it. And like we said yesterday or day before, man, one of the cool things about Twitter is if it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere. So if it doesn't go anywhere and 2 days from now it has 3 likes and no retweets and nobody cared, delete it, rework it, and try it again.
Well, and to your other concern, right now in this moment, you are part of a group of more than 100 people who want to see you succeed.
Yeah, they want to help you. Right.
So if you're worried, like, I don't want to waste this is my best idea, that I don't want to waste it. This is your moment to not waste it. Yeah. But don't get into that mentality, because when you get into that scarcity mentality of like, I only have one good idea and I can't waste it, you're actually telling yourself, I only have one good idea. Like, I don't make good ideas.
Yeah, there's not a person on this earth that only has one good idea.
Yeah, so
it doesn't exist.
I definitely encourage you to, instead, every time you have a good idea, you relish in it and enjoy publishing it and putting it out there, and know that more ideas are coming. Otherwise, you'll just stifle your own creativity.
Yeah, that's the whole that's part of the whole content engine thing, right? And at least for me, is, man, I have ideas pop in my head all the time. What I'm terrible about is remembering them. If you can dump those into a content engine, kind of like Sahil showed, where he just has this big column that's all ideas. That's the exact same thing I do, is I just try and capture them when they pop in. And then 2 or 3 days later, some of them are terrible. Some of them I think are pretty good. Obviously the ones I think are good, that's what I write about. But you need to collect all of those ideas as they hit you. And then I think you'll find you've got a lot more good ideas than what you think you have.
I would even challenge you to say, this should be your pinned tweet.
Yeah.
Like, let's actually aim to make it great, have a great hook, get solid engagement, and pin that. You need a great tweet to pin. It sounds like you are really proud of this one. Like, let's just make it happen. And that entire problem of not having a great looking pinned tweet on your profile, like we've solved it all in the same move, right?
Yeah, kill 2 birds with 1 shot. Thank you, guys. By the way, I have gotten more ideas. I just think I'm not in a moment right now where I can like start like writing, and I'm like taking the course and maybe put a mini pause to when I start, because work is crazy and other stuff. So I want to like at least have, an afternoon to be more than confident, like chill with it and enjoy it rather than it being a stress. So please don't don't get me wrong. Like I'm super
Totally get
excited.
it.
I'm just like
Totally
waiting
get
for
it.
okay. Thanks for the
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. Totally get it.
And thank you for the push as well.
Sure.
All right. Well, the 21 warriors remain. Johan.
Yes. Hey guys. All right, so I'm actually officially a Twitter account as of 2 days ago. So you guys are my first followers.
Awesome.
Surprisingly, I have about 12,000 or 13,000 connections, I guess, on LinkedIn, which
Yep.
I've been nurturing for the past 10 years, but none on Twitter. So this is a cold start for me, and I'm going through this cold start with you guys. And one of the questions that I think is relevant for any account really out there that is in the low 100 or even dozens is how do we hack it so that what we put out there is seen, right? So I take a lot of takeaways from following big accounts so that things get seen. But is there any hack? I love hacks. I've used a bunch of hacks on LinkedIn to get from 5,000 connections to 10,000. One of the hacks is basically, is there a bunch of communities that you think are just designed specifically to just a like, comment, or where you help each other out? So beyond the community that we have of maybe 50, is there a bunch of communities that really are made of 10,000 people that can really put you on, on the moon?
Sounds nice. I think what my answer there is, the best way to do it is what we've outlined previously, is building a group of people around you that are willing to engage, not just for the sake of hacking per se, but because they actually want to see you grow and care about what you're writing. I just think that's a better method long term. Just me, for example, it doesn't have to be a ton of people. For me, there are 4 or 5 people from the very first cohort of this that I became friends with. I still talk to on a regular basis. All 5 of them were at a similar level to me when I took the first cohort, which was less than 10,000 followers. All 5 of them are above 80,000 now. So what happens is there's a better sense of camaraderie there. Because we all came up together. So I know when I post a thread, I've got 5 to 10 people that I know right off the bat, they're going to comment on it, they're going to engage, they're going to do what they're going to tell other people they know about it, because they know me and they're trying to help me, they care about what I'm doing. So to me, it's a lot more, rather than trying to find like big groups that will engage. Sure, I mean, there's paid retweet groups out there where you can pay just to have somebody with 500,000 followers retweet your stuff. For me personally, not a huge fan of that. Will it work? Yeah. Will it kick the algorithm into gear? Yeah, sure. I just find more value in the friendships I've made and grown up with those people from this specific course. Because now I'm in conversations with those people about, lots of other things like side businesses we can start together, working on other projects together outside of this. And I just find that more valuable.
Yeah, I've seen I love organic stuff, of course, but starting from zero, getting to it might take me a couple of months, to get somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
I've seen another trick, and I don't know if that's still legal, is to add auto follow, or you use a tool basically that follows thousands of different accounts, and you expect that so it will convert into people following you. Have you seen that to work, or again? No go.
No experience there. I have not used any tools like that.
There's a 5,000 follows maximum that you can have before you hit a certain number of followers. I can't remember what it is, but Twitter now will not let you just follow an unlimited number of people and then unfollow them if they don't follow you back. So
Yeah.
you can only ever follow 5,000 people until you grow beyond until you grow big. So be careful about that.
Yep,
All right.
agreed. And let's jump to the last one so I can do it, just because I forgot. I just got a notification. I have another call I am supposed to be on in 8 minutes.
Thanks, guys. Jennifer.
And I totally forgot about it. So
Well, I'll make it nice and quick.
sure,
New Yorker,
sure.
get right to the point, do it. So I would love for you to take a look at my Twitter bio, because I feel like I'm kind of struggling a little bit just to kind of get to the point there, because I run marathons. So I have that kind of going on, but then I'm also a tech recruiter. So that going on, I'm not really sure. I feel like maybe everything is not tied together as tightly as it could be.
Cool. Yeah, let's pull it up. Okay. Again, this is just, I feel like I'm being too harsh on people, and I don't, that's not
That's
what
what I
not
come
my
here
intent.
for, right? Like, this is
Okay.
asking for it.
Just in general, for me, I'm not a fan of like I'm the coach of this, or I'm the recruiter of this. Like, I see a lot of people do it. I just don't. For me, it comes off, I don't know, a little cheesy. I don't know the word for it. So rather than like, you're not my favorite tech recruiter, I have no idea who you are. Like that's how my brain works when I see it. And maybe that makes me a jerk, but that's when I read it, like I would just go to, like, I'm a fan of just your name personally. Okay. And then I think your second line is good. Connecting good managers with good devs for good conversations. I like that. The stars, I don't know what the stars are, so I might get
there's six major marathons, and I've run 4. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I got a good friend that's a marathoner. So if you're trying to have both on your bio, kind of the business side, and hey, this is something else that's important to me, I like doing this. If the marathon community knows what those are, then cool, leave them.
Okay.
You know, I just didn't know what they were. So marathon currently adding to talent stack code. Excuse me. I really think the rest of it's pretty good. I think the first line, the connecting good managers with good devs, I think that's good. I'd have to like log into your Twitter account specifically and look, but when you go in to build the bio, the only thing, just from an aesthetic, the way it looks to me, if you could put the stars like on the second line with the marathon stuff, and then like a third line of like your talent stack stuff.
Yeah.
I would just try and chop those up a little bit.
Okay.
But other than that, like I said, I think that is I think you could just make your second line like tech recruiter, connecting good managers with good devs for good conversations. Like, I think that's a good line.
Okay.
But other than that, it's good. I got to run a marathon. Probably be good for me.
When you do it, you'll have to do another one now. That's the thing.
Yeah. All you have to do is show me pictures of people right after they finish a marathon, and I would argue that it's fun.
No, I usually hand afterwards. So yeah, it's pretty good.
But anyway, all right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
See you tomorrow.
Until now.